We are joined by Dr. Mohit Nehal, and he's now with us. Panelists are over. We are now live, and we will be starting the session. I do extend my apologies to all those.
I request everyone to be a little patient. There's some network issue, and Dr. Nishant will be joining us very soon again.
Excuse me, Dr. Joshi.
Dr. Mishra, Dr. Joshi logged out because of a network issue. He's rejoining. I've spoken to him.
Yes, yeah. Is that Professor? Actually, some participants, they have entered the WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
But they're not able to join. So, what is the issue remaining? Can you please?
Sir, actually, there's a registration link that has been forwarded via email to all the participants. So once you register on Zoom, there's an email sent from Dr. Joshi's end, which has the link to join the webinar.
So they have to check their emails now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And they have already entered the group also.
Yes,
so,
they're part of the group. They must have registered.
Now,
so we are on a webinar pattern. So they have to register on the webinar first on Zoom, and the link has been provided in the WhatsApp group. If they've not registered, you can ask them to register now also. We've kept the registration open, and it's only you just have to enter your name and your email ID. Once you do that, they will receive the email, and using that email, they can join the Zoom meeting.
Oh, no, they have already done. They have registered, but they have to enter Zoom. They also have to enter Zoom app.
No, sir. They just have to go to their email and click on the link provided in the email.
Okay. Just click on the link. They will enter the meeting.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just tell them. I hope it's there in their mails now. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ji. Thank you, sir.
Nishant, sir?
Kamlesh, we should start the session immediately. We are already delayed by a good 20 minutes.
Yes. Sir, will Dr. David Jain be joining us?
Hello. Kamlesh, you can hear? We start the session immediately.
All. Good morning, all. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Prestige Institute Department of Law is organizing a two-day. Yes, sir. Prestige Institute Department of Law is organizing a two-day E-Conclave on the theme of Sino-India relation and reality. Now we have three.
Gentlemen, I extremely extend my apologies. Actually, because of the major internet droppage and speed issues, we were not able to start the session on time. I will take the lead to first welcome all the distinguished guests. We have with us Dr. Mohit Nayal. We have with us Dr. Prashant Kumar, and we have with us Dr. Amit Mishra. I extend my apologies for the delay in the start of the function due to the technicalities. I also welcome you all that you have spared your time and you are with us to brief on this very critical issue, which is nowadays debated across all the mediums of media that we can understand, be it paper, be it the social media. Everybody have got their own views and point of views on the issue, but we really want to listen from the experts who have had their first-hand experience both in researching and in practicality. So I'll just take the opportunity to actually introduce the topics and the guests. So the session will start with an opening note of Dr. Davis Jain, who's the group president of the Prestige Group of Industries and the vice chairman of Prestige Education Foundation. Dr. Jain is also the chairman of the Soya Processors Association of India, which is the apex body of all the soya processors in the country. He is also the consultative member of the Food Corporation of India, Madhya Pradesh. A highly knowledgeable agribusiness professional. He has probably traveled half of the world, all the 4 continents where business can take him. He has his own experience with the Chinese business as he is associated to the agri-processing industry. We have with us a very interesting guest in form of Dr. Mohit Nayal. And I must tell you, Dr. Nayal, we are very honored to have you with us. I think you graduated your schooling from Dehradun and went on to be in the defense services. You completed your PhD while you were in services from the Central University. You have your own experiences in the China and Southeast Asia. You have written books, the famous one being The Invisible Wall of China. The title by itself is extremely cohesive to the practices probably China adopts. I think you have gone and did expeditions also on the northern Himalayan regions. So you have first-hand experience both on the ground and off the ground, and with the quality of research, I think we'll be able to better understand what's happening around on the northern borders. We have Dr. Prashant Kumar. Dr. Prashant, we are so glad that you are with us. With your exposure to the higher Tibetan studies, we will get a perspective of China. We have with us Dr. Amit Mishra. He has been strategically involved in the research around India, China, and we had Dr. Mishra in the campus about a couple of years back. We had heard him, and he can bring great value to it. I would take the pleasure of now inviting Dr. Davis Jain to start with his introductory session. Sir, can you hear us? So, good morning, sir. And we are very sorry. We have started about 20 minutes with delay because of the technicalities we were facing. So, we would want to hear your opening note. And being an industrialist, you have your own views about China.
Namaskar and a very good morning to all the panelists and participants on this webinar on straining India-China relations. Friends, it gives me a great pleasure to share my views on the subject of Sino-Indian relations. India and China have a very long history of association. As early as the 5th century, Chinese scholars attended Indian universities and took back Buddhism to China. Thereafter, both nations went into foreign dominion for long periods of time. It was only after the Second World War that a major transformation in the global geopolitical scenario took place. The Allied powers succeeded the gains back to the Axis nations. Many countries earned independence from the British monarchy. The Cold War between two potential superpowers, USA and USSR, took birth. Russia China missed out their industrial revolutions. In 1947, India gained independence and followed the Russian model of socialistic governance, while China under Mao adopted a communist regime in 1949, whose I'm sorry for this. I think I'm audible again. Friends, in 1947, India gained independence and followed the Russian model of socialistic governance, while China under Mao adopted a communist regime in 1949, whose policies were administered by people in the army. India under Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru embarked upon a journey of public investments. Public sector enterprises were set up. Infrastructure such as dams, roads, steel plants, airlines, railways were expanded. This was done primarily to look at the socialist pattern of growth and development. And in fact, our basic preamble itself is that of a socialist republic. China was completely different. China was run by a People's Liberation Army, which was only reporting to Chinese Communist Party, CPC. Indians steadily grew economically, while China was all this while trying to make lots of expansion to its territory. India was only consolidating as it was left as a poor country at the time of independence. The British had taken away almost everything that was there. Now, while India wanted to bring in and usher in a sort of silent revolution in industrial growth and activity, China was looking at something entirely different. Had a reasonable declared independence. The Chinese started lots of land grab activities They went and got the South Mongolian territories in 1949. They got the island in 1950. Accession of Tibet, which was incomplete 1950, they went in 1954 and completed the accession of Tibet, and the Tibet became their territory. That's how they became into border with India. Earlier, they were not having borders with India in early 1947 to 49 period. The Chinese expansion policy was the reason why they attacked India in 1962. Then they got the Aksai area of India, a very strategic part. The 1962 saw a very different scenario from the Chinese. Chinese came and wanted territorial gains, and there were long-term strategic goals associated. Unfortunately, there was a mistake by our then Prime Minister saying that it was a barren land and there were nothing that was growing there. They also forced Pakistan to give POK Karakoram Tract in 1963. They went and acceded some portions of Russia in 1969. So you see, China has always had this territorial expansion policy, and that was a very archaic and ancient way of looking at things. That's how Chairman Mao had designed the Communist Party to grow. They would say whatever is mine is mine, what is yours should be mine also. Let's discuss. They would send their people into foreign territory, take over the territory, expand the territory, marry the women of the cross-border area and claim the place of their own. And they have been doing that forever. The last 50 years saw China grow into a manufacturing giant. In 1972, Richard Nixon, the then American president, and Mao met, and Mao proposed to Nixon that you have technology and I have cheap labor. The most favored nation, MFN, was accorded to China by the United States, and the rest, as they say, is history. China ensured that America nearly shut down all their activities other than armament, and China became the manufacturing hub of the entire world. Apart from this, China also embarked on a very different kind of accession. This time, it was different from being the global land mafia that was China was known to be earlier. It was a very different kind of mafia that they were trying to inculcate, and that was the capital dumping. China managed to accumulate a lot of capital through their trade with USA and other countries, and they went looking for poorer countries which had no capital to deploy, and they would like to project there. They would take projects at much lower cost than other competitors, and then in order to complete their task, they would actually loan to the government a lot of capital at not a very expensive major part of the third world, their economic slaves, so as to say. So China had done two things. They had done the land grab mafia activity of land accession, and they went around economic accession by having major portions of growing economies indebted to them. Let's now take the scene to the present date. In 2019, Wuhan was the scene of breakout of some virus, which later to be known as novel coronavirus or COVID-19. Now this virus had its roots in China and became a pandemic across the world. Till date, it is known it is managed in a biological warfare laboratories, or was it a natural virus which just mutated itself. Nevertheless, the entire world immediately blamed China for two things. A, generating this virus or creating it, and B, for hiding information, concealing data about the actual pandemic nature of this virus, which has led to so many people dying. It had led to more than 14 million people to be affected all over, and over 600,000 people having been killed by the virus. The American president, Donald Trump, is attempting a re-election later this year, and therefore is treading the path very carefully. And in that process, he has blamed China for the virus. And while blaming China for the virus, he has gathered support from a large portion of the world, and only Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea are the nations who are not side with the rest of the world. Australia, India, and USA have already formed together an alliance of sorts to boycott Chinese products. China has now surrounded by economic enemies all around itself. So China did what it always did and what it knew how to do very well: territorial accession and waging a war to gain territory, either it's on naval front or on the army front. So they went around trying to control the entire South China Sea. They put their ships over there. They put the Navy in the full action. And on the land front, the only adversary that they knew, which was kind of threatening to take away the business from them, even though India is only a 3% participant in the Chinese export activity, they had also to take their attention away from the economic situation and bring it to the territorial ones. And that's when we saw the skirmish on Galwan Valley. Now the Galwan Valley and the Aksai Chin area, which they already have, gives them a path through the POK to the Gwadar port, which will make their oil travel much more economical than it is today, and therefore it would boost their economy to that extent. Having said that, let me reiterate, will there be a war? In my opinion, no way. China has realized that India is not the China of 1962. They wanted to test our power, and they have got a fair share of the beating, in which we lost 20 of our brave hearts, but the Chinese any aggression from China anymore. But nevertheless, even as we speak today, the Indian Air Force Chief, along with the commanders, is finalizing plans to how to protect India and how to annihilate the Chinese army if there is a misadventure from their side. The Chinese have also realized that India will hit back this time and hit back very hard. So the clever people, that they are not going to attempt any misadventure now. They tried to instigate Pakistan, who is sending lots of terrorists in last few months, and they were instigating our other peaceful neighbor, Nepal, where Mr. Oli has been making all sorts of statements. So let me put it in this way, that we are in a state of flux. We do not know which way the cookie will crumble, but know this for sure, that China is at the losing end of a lot of economic activity, and India, if at all, will get a major share in the spoils of the world, withdrawing their manufacturing business from China and looking for alternate areas. I'm confident that India will happen to be one of the most fertile ones. Now, just to share some of my personal experiences doing business with China for the past over 20 years. I started traveling to China in 1997, and it used to be mostly our business was transacted through Hong Kong. But then when we landed directly into mainland China, we have observed a lot of things, and that is where I see what we need is something to emulate their example in terms of hard work, discipline, and have a very high level of productivity. They have already created infrastructure. I have witnessed that the first time when I passed through Hong Kong to Guangzhou via a train route. I saw Shenzhen, just a rail shed and a very small kind of a village, which is now a metropolis with over 13 million people living there. A very another, I would say, Hong Kong in making. So infrastructure was something which they kept on developing and developing it to one of the best kind in the world, and that gave their business a lot of strength to compete with their products and services, moving country to country, and they've started with that economic activity, having started investing into countries, participating into the manufacturing processes and development process, which these poor countries are already seen hard to have capital, which they started providing to them so as to have access into their governance, into their process, into their policy making, and created their strength. It was, I would say, in 1978 with Deng Xiaoping Prime Minister Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and our Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan, liberalization, attracting the world to invest in our countries, in our manufacturing, and what these countries they did, that in the two things which I see a difference. Number one, in their country, the women participated. I think every one of them started working for the business or for trade, and that, I think, doubled their GDP. Judicial system, people would be, and then speaking English, people would be more comfortable, barring the only Chinese work culture, which we need to really emulate and adopt. If we are able to do that, I'm pretty sure India would be a force to reckon with in the manufacturing area as well. While we have made our felt into service sector, and we into IT and other things, we are already very well known country in the world, where we have producing new technologies through IT. I think we have no reason that our MSME and our other manufacturing industries could also do equally well and could compete with our products, not only for our local populace, but also could words of wisdom of our learned panelists. I will end my address now. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. You have very well set the tone of the conclave by describing the brief background of India-China. You went on to describe the virus issue. And Donald Trump many times mocks it as the Chinese virus. You also touched upon the geopolitical issues or the fronts, the Indian side and the South China Sea. You have very well raised the defense issues. You have been able to come up and give us an idea on the Galwan and Aksai Chin area. And as you know, we had Dr. Harsh Pant with us a couple of weeks back, and he was also referring to that war is not the solution, and war will take place between two nuclear powers. You have very well pointed out the issues, how the Chinese economy has grown due to the hard work, discipline, and high productivity. The infrastructure being a key issue in their growth, their policies towards business makes them extremely suitable for large industries to get set it up. And their social inclusion levels, specifically when women are getting involved, are there. And under these circumstances, it is very important to understand how China has been playing their part in business and commerce, and how they are influencing economies through the economic might they have. We have with us Dr. Mohit Nayal. He's a strategic analyst. During the opening session of the conclave, I had briefed the audience about his journey as an his early academics, his pursuit with the armed forces, and being a writer, author, and a person having ground information. I would invite Dr. Nayal to share his ideas on China's Belt and Road Initiative, contours, implications, and alternatives. I welcome Dr. Nayal.
Very good morning to all of you. I hope I am audible.
Good morning.
Yes, sir, you are very audible, sir.
First of all, I'll share the screen so that the presentation gets visible to everybody. Okay, right. Is the presentation visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Once again, a very good morning to all of you. And at the outset, I wish to thank the Prestige Institute of Management and Research, Department of Law, for having invited me for today's presentation. Well, presently, I am with the National Maritime Foundation, and during my period with National Maritime Foundation, we are looking into the sea law, maritime engagements, the Indian coastal security, and also Chinese activities in the Indo-Pacific region. Studies related to China have always been close to my heart, and I have been pursuing military strategy of China and their developments from the last 15 years. Today, during the course of my presentation, I shall be covering the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, which has taken the world by storm. And when I say so, it is to the fact that today 138 countries are part of the BRI, and there are many more who are indirectly benefiting or getting affected because of the BRI. Well, in 2012, President Xi Jinping came into power, and very soon the idea of BRI was rolled out by China. It talked about hard infrastructure and soft connectivity. Within the 8 years of BRI, it has impacted the world. However, many nations have been wary of the activities of the Chinese. China does understand these concerns and has taken due measures to make their perspective being understood. In light of the same, President Xi Jinping during 2017, during a speech on the United Nations stated, and I quote, "China's development has been possible because of the world, and China has contributed to the world's development. We will continue to pursue win-win strategy of opening up, sharing our development opportunities with other nations, and Well, what has happened with the BRI? BRI has been reasonably successful to make land connective routes in mainly all continents and along with it open up the maritime silk routes. Today, almost all states which were used for trade transaction are linked with the BRI concept. Therefore, it becomes important to understand, examine how China has developed its BRI and draw out lessons. What is the impact of BRI? To begin with, 62% of the world's population stays in the countries where BRI is today involved. In 2019, 29 trillion US dollars was the combined GDP of 138 countries which are part of this BRI concept. In the years to come, by 2030, $26 billion will be spent to develop the infrastructure within these areas. China has been galloping with its trade with BRI nations, which today stands at $1.34 trillion. Well, if that is the magnitude of Chinese BRI, the very important question comes to mind is that whether China is a threat to the world? Well, obviously not. Is China a risk? Yes, definitely China is a risk. Therefore, before having any engagement with China, it becomes important that we understand China in a better light. Now, understanding towards China can develop under this format. We may generate adequate information, rather correct information about who we are dealing with. If we fail to do so, then the next option left for us is to make assumptions. Whether it was information or whether collection of assumptions, they would lead to perceptions. And finally, actions on ground. These actions can be constructive, non-constructive, or nations may decide to stay neutral. In all possibility, let us not forget that China is not the only nation which is contributing towards the global economy or the global security. Therefore, it becomes important to see the role of other nations. It is very well highlighted through the slide that if we look at the economic projection of the world by 2030, United Nations and India would figure up in the first and the third position. Therefore, both these countries who do not have any direct engagement with the BRI will definitely shape up the world. But we also need to understand BRI because that is involving a larger part of the world. Having said so, let us understand the balance. Each nation tries a dominance. In the world order which today exists, definitely the United States has a domination. However, the other nations of the world are equally required to maintain a balance. Whether the position of lead is with the United States or moves out in the hand of China, what is important is the balance. And that is what we need to find in the construct of BRI. If we fail to do so, then in the coming years, not only will be a situation of imploding take place in economic terms, but also create security risk. Therefore, let us understand what really inspired China to go ahead with the Belt Road Initiative. Whatever I've read of China in last couple of years, I came to the conclusion that Belt Road Initiative comes back with a lot of history, with a lot of experience of China, which helped it or assisted it to roll out the Belt Road Initiative and speed up the entire process in the fastest manner. So what are the impacts? The colonial powers had a huge impact on China. It quietly observed the Cold War era when two superpowers were engaged in world order establishment. It had concerns of its own minorities. And finally, everything came down for economic development. Each of these aspects we will elaborate and discuss in detail, starting with the historical preview. Well, from the Neolithic time, China has maintained a continuity of having a civilization which is 5,000 years old. Over the years, they have made reasonable contribution and they are indeed an old civilization. However, developments of last few centuries gave an edge to the Western powers which denuded these achievements of the Chinese, who have given to the world the paper, silk, seed drills, compass, and so many other things. With this understanding, let us also see how history took China. Because of the restraint of time, I shall not dwell too much about the historical past. But what I intend to show to you with the flick of these coming slides is that China as a nation never existed in the form that it is seen today. Rather, the dynasties which were there had certain areas with them, with the northern and the western region having kingdoms with their own share of independence. However, today, what we see of China is a consolidated China which is flashed on the screen. Well, if this is what China is, then let us see what is the burning issue of the past that troubles China. Well, the century of humiliation, which China says started in 1839 and continued till the communist power came in China, was of humiliation. Many colonial powers during that time entered into Chinese areas and started negotiating with China, getting them into deals and treaties which were quite unfavorable from the Chinese perspective. Let us see few of them. As far as the Britishers were concerned, the Chinese had to undergo two opium wars. And finally, the British also invaded Tibet. As far as Japanese are concerned, they fought two wars with China. Even the French were not far behind and captured certain areas in China for their trade advancement. Because of this foreign engagements, there were a lot of unequal treaties which China was forced to sign. Internally also, the empire of China was disturbed, because of which they faced Taiping rebellion and the Boxers uprising. So this whole entire phase saw a lot of instability in China, and the mandate to dictate terms for its well-being did not figure up in priority. 1949, China became an independent state. However, with the end of World War, the Communist and the Republican headed into a war, which was a civil war of 4 years. Finally, Mao Zedong became the premier of China. Over the years, the chairman and further the secretary of the party have commanded and ruled over the policies of China. Therefore, it becomes important to look into the type of leadership which has evolved in the state. Well, almost all the leaders had certain commonalities. Whereas the supremacy of the Communist Party was always maintained. At no time China was put through crisis of nepotism. Irrespective of the iron fist policy, the economic transformation was a priority, whether through the socialistic mechanism or later through the capitalistic mechanism. All in all, China always realized the threat that it faces internally from its minority community, and it was always a challenge to maintain peace and stability. The next factor impacting the BRI was the Cold War era. Let us not forget that when China became independent under the communists, in 62, they were heavily under the influence of the Soviet Union. During the Cold War era, the United States and Soviet Union created various blocs. The Truman Doctrine and the Iron Curtain policy dictated the future of many states. The Korean War almost divided the peninsula into two different states. Huge amount of military spending was witnessed during the Cold War era. And finally, the space race became one of the causes, or rather a major cause, for the disintegration of the Soviet Union. China during this period was not very powerful, but was closely reading this entire process of the Cold War. It realized that both these world leaders and powers were spending huge amount of financial remuneration to ensure loyalties of many nations towards them. Today, with modification, China extends loan to weaker states for development, primarily maintaining its supremacy and control in many regions around the world. Let us also take a few minutes and see what was happening within China during the communist rule. The 100 Flower campaign was something started for internal criticism. The logic was to give people an opportunity to criticize the government and bring out the best. However, when it did start, because of the level in which people went out criticizing the government, the entire movement was suppressed. The great leap forward then immediately was launched in China with the objective of ensuring development not only in the industrial sector but also agriculture. However, the truncation period and the expectations were so high that the entire project fell, finally leading to famine in China in 1959. This forced Mao Zedong to go into self-exile, giving powers to other leaders to run China. In 1966, when Mao Zedong intended to come back in the center stage of politics, a cultural revolution took place, where the Communist Party, being run by other political leaders, were undermined and supremacy of Mao Zedong was again restored. Much after the death of Mao Zedong, the rural reforms in China took place. Chinese economy opened up and their alliance and relations with the United States for economic growth became much better. As far as communism and democracy was concerned, again in 1980 the cultural fever started, which had people talking of democracy. China had that famous wall of democracy where people would come and criticize the government, which was not really liked by the communist regime. The similar effect further saw the Tiananmen Square of 1989. And finally, the minority issue in the autonomous provinces. What we see a commonality in all this are two factors. Throughout this entire episodes or events, the fact remains that Communist Party always tried to maintain their supremacy, one, and two, development, welfare, and economic well-being of the people was in their center focus. Whether they were successful or whether they were not, but still it was one of their key driving force. By the time 2000 came, China realized that its entire country gets divided into two parts. The western part remained underdeveloped with much of its resources being utilized by the entire nation, whereas the eastern region became more developed economically. Well, what led to this kind of a development and its implications? Because of the sea connectivity of the eastern region, the special economic zone for economic upliftment of the entire economy of China came closer to the coastal region. Much due to this, a large-scale immigration of workers from the hinterland towards the coastal region took place. The western region was primarily utilized for resource exploitation, and many of the minority communities living in these areas went into severe suppression. Let us not forget that what we see China today is composed of minorities from Xinjiang, Tibet, and Mongolia. Therefore, the communist regime in China by 2000 realized that they need to look into the economic interest in the areas in the northern and the western regions. Much with this logic, China realized that development in many of these regions can only come if the energy resources are made accessible. Therefore, energy resources from Central Asia, from Myanmar, or even through sea routes were linked towards the western and the northern region. When this connectivity process started, China realized that it was well equipped to undertake such infrastructure development, primarily because of two reasons. Firstly, in the last 20 to 30 years, China's GDP had the backbone of infrastructure development. So they were good at expanding the infrastructure of oil and gas fields. Secondly, this provided new markets for China into its neighborhood. Therefore, when China developed its oil and gas pipelines in Myanmar, it helped it to reduce the cost of transporting its entire oil and gas resources through the sea routes. Further, it got involved with the Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar economic corridor, benefiting by linking with various other nations within its regional reach. In the Central Asia, China developed multiple pipelines to ensure consistent supply of oil and gas, which could help it to fuel its economy. As far as Pakistan is concerned, which today stands almost a rogue state, it handed over Gadar port to China. Today, China has made reasonable infrastructure linking Gadar port to its own territories in Xinjiang, ensuring supplies consistently move from the Middle East region within its region at the shortest possible time. Not only has been China utilizing Pakistan's area for resource push development, it is also supplying power to Pakistan. And today, as things stand, Pakistan is not only heavily indebted to China in terms of financial issues, but is also dependent on China in terms of energy requirements. Now let us see how things stood within China as far as its western and eastern regions were concerned. As far as West were concerned, way back in 2000, the GDP, which is reflected with light color shades in the western region, was less than 3,000 mark, whereas in the coastal region, the GDP figures were much higher. Without these initiatives of linking development infrastructure, in 10 years, the GDP of provinces like Tibet, Xinjiang started speeding up. By 2017, today as we see, many of these regions have much higher GDP as compared to the national figures. Now with all this construct, China realized that linking with outer world is beneficial. It did not restrict its approach to the region only. Rather, it simultaneously undertook the Belt and Road initiatives with all the lessons of Cold War, colonial era, issues of minorities, and started building maritime Silk Route, linking with various corridors and developing road connectivity. Today, the expanse under which China works. Whether it is connectivity to Russia, Europe, using the Arctic route, or even linking to Latin American countries, China has done reasonable work. Various Chinese projects, whether they are related to railway development, industrial park, port development, and many other issues, have been well financed and executed in the shortest time frame. Now, these projects require huge amount of funding. China did prepare well to ensure that it does have enough financial resources to ensure that many countries where it went for such projects did take loan from it and projects worked in time. For the requirement of this money, China systematically developed its financial infrastructure, whether it was Chinese development banks, Asian Infrastructure Development Bank, or the Shanghai Cooperation Organizational Development Banks. In all fields, it had enough resources to share with those nations which were undertaking its linked projects. Apart from linking individually nation to nation, China also ensured that it has dialogues with the regional associations and forums, linking it China Arab State Corporation, Shanghai Corporation, Asia European Meeting, China Gulf Corporation, and many like such issues, which give them access to almost all parts of the world. What is BRI brought to China? Today, China has ensured it has very well generated links for oil and gas resources, industrial products, and many other issues as flashed on the screen. As far as the world is concerned, the BRI has brought its own rest. Many of the nations like Pakistan, Laos, Mongolia today stand highly under the depth of China. There are many other nations which are struggling with the kind of debt China has brought to them because of these development issues. As far as the world is concerned, there are different reactions, varied reactions across. Latin America, there are no direct BRI investments, but definitely China is making individual connect with the countries, ensuring long-term contracts. United States has primarily and deliberately kept itself out of the BRI construct. Pakistan has almost played the card as per Chinese game, and they are into heavy debts. As far as Russia is concerned, they do have their reluctancy, especially related to Chinese activities in the Central Asian region. But however, in various projects, it comes to light that they have well linked with China. Well, as far as India is concerned, which is our concern, India finds these investments something which it needs to evaluate with caution. Firstly, the BRI entire structure goes through area which are dispute between India and Pakistan. Therefore, India does not give legitimacy to the China-Pakistan economic corridor. That is a major concern which holds back India. So where do we stand? If today this Chinese train is to move, India does need to hold and think whether it needs to collaborate economically with China or whether maintain its own isolation. This situation, to be or not to be, has been adequately handled by India in a balanced manner. Where required, Indian policies have been tough. Where required, India has extended collaboration with China. Well, what level of collaboration today India has done with China is reflected through the Infrastructure Investment Bank. Today, India is one of the highest contributor as well as a nation which takes adequate loan from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. To remind you, the metro layer train network in Bangalore is being funded through this mechanism. And in addition, there are various projects in states like Gujarat and Maharashtra which are being undertaken through these financings. Now, coming to the BRI implications, and each one of them are important and covered. Firstly, the debt trap. Secondly, China does not care too much about environmental issues. Therefore, today, much of the waters of Laos is contaminated where they are into agriculture, productions of bananas. There are safety concerns which exist with many of their projects. Working on these projects, China prefers to utilize its own people. Therefore, these nations where the projects are being undertaken do not find local employability. The land control in many of these states, especially in Africa, has moved into the hands of China. Overall, if we see, much of the deal which China offers is quite imbalanced. Therefore, what is required is to see Belt and Road Initiative of China with caution. In the construct of Belt and Road, China has gained huge confidence and it feels it is ready to take on multiple concerns which exist at the international forum. Therefore, in the last few months, we see China getting into trade war with United States. We see it more assertive with issues related to Hong Kong. We see it more assertive and engaging with India in terms of border conflicts and many more issues which reflect China's overconfidence which is generated through BRI. Therefore, it becomes important for policy makers in India and around the world to closely read BRI, examine and see its implications. With this, I come to the end of my talk. I would be very happy to take any questions related to the entire presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nayal. It was a great presentation from your end. We liked it, and it was very exhaustive. You started right from the era of Chinese humiliation, and to cover the fact that the Western China, which is the Yellow Sea land, Yellow River land, I'm sorry, where we find one of the most fertile lands in the world and predominantly agri dependent, they have done a lot of progress, economic progress, while the Eastern Chinese front is not so developed. It was great to understand that the Chinese focus on people development and overall economic development is so high, which is creating probably a stress to the existing Chinese government. The people are expecting the rate of growth to be as similar to what they had achieved in the early 2000s. And BRI is a major debt trap. It is a problem to India in terms of the fact that it passes through some of our sovereign lands, and it disturbs our landscape also. And Chinese have their own ways and means which are not sir, it was great to have you. We got a new idea of China as a country. We understood the Belt and Road Initiative better after your discourse. We also understood how China is trying to engulf the whole region and trying to create a supremacy through the money that they have. It was very interesting to see the map, the BRI map, which actually engulfs the whole of Asia slowly. And panelists can ask questions to Dr. Nayal. If there are any questions that the panelists wish to raise to Dr. Nayal.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, please
Yes,
go ahead,
sir.
Dr. Prashant.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please do it.
Am I able to hear you, Dr. Mohit?
Yeah, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to ask Dr. Mohi that, and thank you very much for your enlightening and wonderful presentation. And that's very enlightening for us to know the exact sinister design of the China as such. I want to know about the kind of strategic mismatch of perception, that how these two great nations, China and India, somehow perceives the entire strategic mapping of Asia as such. Do you think that on the one hand, when China is in the favor of a multipolar world, but a unipolar Asia, and Americans want a multipolar Asia, but rather a unipolar world, and India wants a kind of multipolar Asia and a multipolar world. So how do you think that these three apparently kind of mismatch in the strategic perception of the global scenario is going to have a very you know congruent kind of situation with each other, especially vis-a-vis when you are talking about India and China? What's your take on that, Dr. Nayal? Could you enlighten us a little bit about that?
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Prashant. I would just rephrase your question so that we are on the common platform as far as your question is concerned. Firstly, you wish to know how India and China would, work out their own strategy in the international forum, whether it is related to their perception of multipolar world and a unipolar world. Now, I would pick certain examples which we take stands as per our suitability. Like example one, China has always supported and said that all international organizations and their mandate should be respected. And there is no reason to change that order. In light of the same, it has resisted India's seat in the permanent United Nations seat of permanency by saying that the world order does not require any change. However, when it comes to utilization of dollars, they today trade with almost 83 partners in yuan, and they do not wish to utilize the regular dollar currency of the world.
Indeed, indeed.
Now, when you look at India, we have objected to Chinese stance in sea and said that freedom of navigation should be promoted. So our defense minister, during his visit to Japan, categorically stated 5 months prior that India supports freedom of navigation like the United States and rest of the world. But the hard reality is when it comes to movement of vessels closer to the Indian region, we have same issues of concerns, and we do not wish nations to exercise freedom of navigation. De facto meaning that even if there are military vessels moving, submarines and other, they need to be identified, communicated, and then given a safe passage. So what is happening is every nation plays its card depending upon how it is being pitched. Today, more than the World Bank, the the global economy is today banking on Chinese funding. Now, if that is happening, the entire construct has undergone a change. When World Bank was established, political considerations were never the major driving force for giving fundings to countries. But today, as things stand, many of the countries which have been considered rogue states do not get funding through World Bank. And therefore, they are moving towards Chinese funding where people are not asked questions and there is lack of political accountability. So if we see the pattern of various states, we realize that when we talk of unipolar or multipolar nations, it exactly depends upon which type of card we intend to play. And this would continue. And at various stages, it will be handled through diplomacy, through military power, through various other mechanisms, with different construct being played. Sometimes we would align with ASEAN, sometimes we would align talking nation to nation. India has also done this in past, where we have set aside regional organizations and preferred to deal with nation at bilateral level. But then we have never denuded the importance of various organizations. Similarly, when China and Philippines had an arbitration issue of islands, it overruled the judgment of the international law and went into bilateral issues to resolve the entire conflict. So these things will keep playing like they are instruments to be utilized primarily to meet their own national objectives. So I hope I've been able to give an overview of how multiple layers and multiple stages of work is being done in various constructs. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. This brings the session to a very interesting end. China, while has a northern border with the Mongolia, and in the south, it has borders with Bangladesh, Burma, India, Laos, where it has been some or the other way able to keep the South Asian countries at bay. It has a very, very important view of the South China Sea, and South China Sea is not only a very major trade path, it is also abundant with natural resources that China wants hardly. They just cannot afford to have it. They keep on encroaching the South China Sea. There are a lot of disputes with Malaysia, Philippines, and even Vietnam to begin with. There are problems in the South China Sea, and 30% of the world trade actually goes through the South China Sea. South China Sea is so important that Chinese trade, about 60-70% of the Chinese trade also pass through the South China Sea. South China Sea has become over the years a major point of confrontation between India and the US and China. They keep on confronting with each other on the South China Sea and the freedom of navigation disputes. We have with us Dr. Amit Mishra, who would be speaking on India's increasing profile in the South China Sea. He is from the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Study. I welcome Dr. Mishra and I would want him to continue.
Okay. Am I ready? Is my voice audible?
Yes, sir. Your voice
Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Dr. Joshi? Honorable Chairperson, everybody can hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah, sure. So, good morning, all of you. Honorable Chairperson and organizers of the E-Conclave and esteemed scholars and dear listeners, my friends. So as I'm speaking on India's increasing profile in the South China Sea, and very much it has been nicely introduced by one of our moderators. Yes, South China Sea is a big mystery space in the earth, which is home to many explorations and a lot of economic developments it can give. Okay, anyways, to begin with, I may use a little Hindi also. I mean, if for the sake of some people who maybe some audience, some of the students who might be a little more comfortable in Hindi, I can use some Hindi words also, no problem. I mean, if there's no problem. A very brief introduction, I mean, of who are not very well versed with it. That South China Sea is a region, is a maritime region located south of Chinese mainland, right? It's the south of Chinese mainland, which is flanked, by, I mean, a lot of islands, you see, and which is also surrounded by a lot of countries which are in the Southeast Asian regions, right? Now, in recent years, at least in the recent decade, the South China Sea has been a growing area of growing conflicts due to various territorial claims by various states, along with China, of course. Beginning with the claims, well, let's talk about two types of islands in the South China Sea, basically, which are the object of territorial claims, territorial disputes between the countries of Southeast Asia, say Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, etc., and China. The first is the Paracel group of islands, you see, and the second is the Spratly Islands. Now, the Paracel Islands are located in the northwest portion of the South China Sea, right? They're in the northwest corner of the South China Sea. And well, they're located in the southeast corner, basically large artificial islands. So these two groups of
Uh, Amit sir, I think
Hello.
you've accidentally muted your mic.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
I'll just do again. Is it okay now? Is it okay now?
it's perfect now. Thank you, sir.
There was some problem. There was some problem again. A lot of technical problems is there, even in the age of technology. What to do? Okay. Yeah. Can I continue?
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Yeah. So with respect to Spratly Islands, which are in the southeastern part of the sea, well, different geographical features have been reportedly occupied by claimants as Taiwan, I mean the other form of China, which they call the democratic form of China, Vietnam, Philippines, China itself, and Malaysia have got a lot of claims, different claims over Spratly Islands. And you see the other one, which is Paracel Islands, are mainly claimed by China, Vietnam, and Taiwan, right? Because they're in the upper part. So more that China, Vietnam, and Taiwan are in closer proximity to these islands. Now, South China Sea is a wide sea area. You see, it's a wide sea area which is rich in mineral resources and fishery stocks. You see, that comprise the livelihood of so many fishermen and poor people there. So, I mean, we are first seeing the significance part of it. You know, these are the various parts of significance with which I'm starting. Well, about the fishery part, the fishery stocks. It's the livelihood of millions and millions of fishermen. Secondly, there is abundance of rich hydrocarbons. Of course, what one of our learned friends just pointed out. Yes, there is a rich abundance of hydrocarbons. मतलब कई तरह के खनिज पदार्थ जो कहते हैं समंदर के गहराई में, and you know other seabed minerals are there. जो बहुत से खनिज हैं, minerals हैं, which are still unexplored. Right? There is a lot of them. Then thirdly, strategic significance of the South China Sea also is derived from its geography. You see, इसके भूगोल से भी काफी पता चलता है क्योंकि ये साउथ साइड में है, दक्षिण में है, चाइनीज मेनलैंड के साउथ साइड में है, and it's flanked by a number of Southeast Asian nations, and which also gives some rights of these nations. Then now nations like China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, and काफी गहरी मात्रा में उपलब्धि है, you know, which is a major motivator even for countries which are not directly, you know, a part of it, such as India. You see. Now, next coming to is freedom of navigation. You see that freedom of navigation आवाजाही की जो अलग-अलग देशों की जहाजों को ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स के लिए आवाजाही की जो स्वतंत्रता मिलनी चाहिए, that's a major factor, you see. Now, freedom of navigation in the region is also a bone of contention between the various nations. It's also a contentious issue. ये भी मतलब एक उपद्रव का कारण है. Now, especially between United States and China, over rights of US military vessels to operate in China's, you know, China's 200 miles exclusive economic zone, the EZ. So, उसके अंदर भी कई बारी यूएस मिलिट्री वेसल्स गए हैं, कभी कभी गए हैं ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स बढ़ाने के लिए, कई बारी जाते हैं. तो उसमें कुछ कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स आई हैं. और कंट्रीज जैसे वियतनाम है, फिलीपींस है, मलेशिया, इवन इन देयर एक्सक्लूसिव इकोनॉमिक जोन्स आल्सो समटाइम्स देयर हैज बीन सम क्लैशेस ओवर फ्रीडम ऑफ नेविगेशन. Even sometimes some Indian vessels have been there in the South China Sea, but they have been challenged by by the Chinese military, by the Chinese ships. So that is there. Next, coming to our major part, which is the crux of it, I mean, which is India's role or India's position in South China Sea. What is India's stake in this? Now, we see that geographical location of South China Sea is extremely important even for India. That it links the Indian Ocean, in Mahasagar को Pacific Ocean के साथ link करता है, प्रशांत महासागर के साथ it's linking. So it's a source of India's trade interests with East Asia. भारत के व्यापार के लिए काफी मैटर करता है ईस्ट एशिया के साथ. ईस्ट एशिया यानी पूर्वी एशिया countries as far as Japan and even China, the Koreas, you see. So like that, you see, to some extent Taiwan and also the Pacific corridor, क्योंकि उस तरफ से और बहुत से islands हैं जहाँ पे I mean अक्सर American bases भी हैं, and there is a lot of trade routes which I mean there is a lot of trade and commerce which does happen through, as far as even the region in the eastern corner of Soviet Union, which is Vladivostok, which is also one of the world's busiest routes. Vladivostok side में भी बहुत व्यापार वाणिज्य होता है. तो यही पैसिफिक कॉरिडोर के लिए ये बहुत ही क्रिटिकल चीज है, जो इंडिया के लिए भी बहुत ही लाभदायक है, और ये एक रुचिकर इशू है. Now it is also a critical shipping channel. The South China Sea region as a shipping channel, it accounts to half of the world's merchant ships. Practically, दुनिया के आधे you see व्यापारिक जहाज पास करते हैं इसी region से ही. It accounts to half of the world's merchant ships which pass through it, and keeping the South China Sea open for commercial navigation is a top priority for all the major nations of the world. I mean, all the major players in that region, such as even the United States, and as well as even China. So that is also a major factor for India to also have a lot of interest in it. Now, third is, well, South China Sea is a valuable repository of energy reserves. You see, which I had slightly pointed earlier, that energy reserves ऊर्जा के लिए एक बहुत ही मेजर रिसोर्स है. ऊर्जा जो भारत के लिए मतलब काफी मात्रा में अभी चाहिए. The region is very significant in proven oil reserves. It has a proven oil reserves of 1.2 cubic kilometers. I mean, that is, I mean, total estimate comes to around 4.5 thousand cubic kilometers. That is 28 billion barrels. Total in barrels, let's see. Well, 28 billion barrels are the total oil reserves in this enormous region, which is almost equal to the size of India, maybe slightly less or slightly more. I mean, almost equal to the size of India. And besides oil, besides petroleum, natural gas reserves, जो प्राकृतिक गैस भी जो चाहिए, वो भी भारी मात्रा में मिलती है यहाँ पे. Natural gas reserves are estimated to total around 7,500 cubic kilometers. which is a gigantic sum. बहुत ही विशाल नंबर है और इसकी कहीं ज्यादा मात्रा, इवन तेल से भी ज्यादा मात्रा नेचुरल गैस की मिलती है साउथ चाइना सी रीजन में. Then this body of water holds 1/3 of the entire world's marine biodiversity. Okay, thereby it is an important area for even the world's ecosystem, right? मतलब इसके अंदर जो हमारे मैरीन जीव जंतु, उसकी बायोडाइवर्सिटी भी एक वर्ल्ड के इकोसिस्टम के लिए, वर्ल्ड के सस्टेनेंस के लिए बहुत ही वाइटल है. Almost 1/3 of the entire world's marine biodiversity lives and survives in this maritime region. The marine aquatic plants and the marine animals, I mean, which is 1/3. So that means a lot, coming to around, say, this thing. Now, next one, a report was given in 2013 by the US Energy Information Administration that oil reserves in the South China Sea are about 11 billion barrels, right? 11 billion barrels, which may appear to be a large sum, but you see, but they are not that large for keeping in mind China's requirement, which is the main adversary there in the whole region, which is trying to engulf the region, which is the main object of the dispute, which is the main crux of the problem. Considering 11 billion barrels, it is just enough. I mean, it is just enough to power China. For just 3 years. You see, for just 3 years, 11 billion barrels of oil. So it is not that much. It is requirements cannot be fulfilled by this thing, but still then it banks on that region only, on manipulating the whole region. But speaking about natural gas reserves, they have a considerably larger amount. I mean, they're quite a lot. They are approximately 266 trillion cubic feet. That is 7,500 cubic kilometers, which is considerable enough as a powerhouse even for China. Why we are giving it as a standard? Because that has the main contention that it requires, and after its name, the belt had been given by people earlier in history, so it has the claim. But it can power China for more than 30 years. That much natural gas deposits are there at current rates. But we see China's energy demands have been constantly growing since recent years. So just see the amount. I mean, how it can benefit for other countries, the Southeast Asian countries, the energy needs of Southeast Asian nations. And India is having a lot of has forged closer relations with Southeast Asian nations. So in a way, it would also be a great boon for India's energy sector. I mean, natural gas, which is also in great demand. Then the sixth part in India's factors, that fishing in South China Sea is a major source of economy, of course, for many regions. Economical aspect में अगर देखें, आर्थिक स्थिति से देखें तो मत्स्य पालन, मछली पालन साउथ चाइना सी में एक मेजर सोर्स है इकोनॉमी का, and some estimates indicate that up to 10%, up to 10% of the world's ocean caught fish comes from the region, right? It comes from the region. That means something. I mean, 1/10 of the entire this thing means something. And however, the fish stocks in the area, जितने भी मछली का stock है, जितना भी मछली का stock है, no, that is subsequently getting depleted over the years due to many reasons. Maybe due to sometimes illegal fishing and also some manipulation by powerful nations. But to prevent that, countries are now using fishing ban policies. as a means of asserting their sovereignty claims. They are at least saying that in their area, at least within their exclusive economic zone or this thing, countries like Vietnam or Malaysia or Philippines or Indonesia, yeah, Singapore, say, or Taiwan, Brunei, they don't want to they want to keep their zone a little restricted zone so that a lot of their fish potential is not depleted, right? Well, then very briefly, I'll tell you. Okay, I mean these are some of the very essential determinants which affect India's participation. Well, coming to a very interesting thing, uh, when we talk about conflicts, yeah, we speak about conflicts. Well, let me tell you an incident of called Scarborough Shoal incident happened actually, which was an object of conflict. Why it was? It was a very sensitive incident. Scarborough Shoal is a fishing area actually. It's a marine area. It's a fishing ground, less than 130 miles off the Philippines coast. You know, it's less than 130 miles. That means it's very much within the exclusive economic zone of Philippines. But in 2012, what happened? The Philippines Navy discovered a Chinese vessel which was engaged in illegal fishing in the area. You see, Chinese ships were coming. I mean, it was this thing. It disturbed the boats, and they were countering fishing boats of Philippines. I mean, coming within Philippines zone. So that was a clear, I mean, a clear intrusion in the Philippine space. इनमें ही घुसपैठ की बात थी, क्लियर केस था घुसपैठ करने का. Now, before Philippines could take any action, two Chinese surveillance ships came to the aid of the vessel and blocked access to the shoal, right? I mean, the action उन्हीं के space में आके दो और Chinese ships started coming and blocking. So this was a clear aggression. This was an act of aggression, which was responded very boldly through an international case, which was filed against China in the International Court of Justice in 2013. केस फाइल किया गया हेग में, नेदरलैंड्स में, जिसमें I mean a tough decision was taken. And well, एक जो traditionally there is a 9 dash line, you see, which has been represented. I mean, there was a 9 dash line which was given by China. I mean, long back. I mean, that 9 dash line encompassing almost the entire South China Sea. Now, well, if South China Sea के मैप में अगर देखेंगे दक्षिण चीन सागर में एकदम स्टार्टिंग से जब हम देखते हैं, इवन वियतनामीज यू सी नियर गल्फ ऑफ टोंकिन से गल्फ ऑफ टोंकिन भी हो और उससे एकदम जहाँ पे स्टार्टिंग जोन है जहाँ पे पैरासोल आइलैंड स्टार्ट होते हैं, वहां से लेके टिल स्ट्रेट ऑफ ताइवान. I mean, it's an arc. It was subsequently reduced to, yeah. Am I clear?
Yeah, you're clear.
Yeah, it was subsequently reduced to 9 only, but that was a constant legal threat for all the other neighboring nations of the region, and that was a very controversial line, which was ultimately rejected in 2016 by the International Court while upholding the rights of Philippines in the area. You know, in the aftermath of the Scarborough Shoal incident, जब ये Scarborough Shoal जो घटना हुई जब Philippines coast के चारों तरफ जो उसके पोस्ट के सामने जब ये घटना हुई, उसके बाद ही 9 डैश लाइन को भी कैंसिल कर लिया गया. Actually, it was originally called the 11 dash line. It's also sometimes alternatively called the 11 dash line or 10 dash line. It's the 9 dash line which is now held invalid. So that was a major diplomatic victory for other Southeast Asian nations as well as even India. Now, India is one of those nations which, along with dozens of European nations, काफी European nations and even East Asian nations like Japan, Australia, and all, which supported the move of the International Court in this regard. Now, we see coming to the conflict. Now, we also see that India has taken an interest, though directly it is not a region, to which India belongs, but still it has tried to play a more active interest because it has forged close relations with Southeast Asian nations. You see, India, which are quite close partners to India. Namely, we start with Vietnam. That Vietnam has been called as India's diamond on the South China Sea. Yeah, South China Sea का एक हीरे की तरह है. You know, it's such a close partner, and strategic partnership with Vietnam was, it has been right and has been strengthened in its military side also in wake of China's growing overtures. जब चाइना की और गतिविधियां हुई, काफी उग्रवादी गतिविधियां हुई, aggressive गतिविधियां हुई, both in the South China Sea and Indian Ocean also, when China started claiming its presence and shown its illegal presence through having secret trade relations with countries like Maldives and Sri Lanka, through which you see, when we see the Hambantota Island episode, how it took away the island. It has taken away the island through lease, through so much of lending, so much of loans to Lanka, and when it was not able to pay back. So how it has acquired the lease of Hambantota Island for 99 years. So that's a major thorn, you see. So Indian Ocean, which also hardly, doesn't belong, China should not be concerned in any direct manner, but it's trying to have its presence here. So in that way, having presence in South China Sea is also it's also a strategic answer which had to be given by India. It had to retaliate because that was being a constant threat. Now, even Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2007 had also told about a confluence of two seas, had told about this relationship, that when he he told about Indo-Pacific region, the significance of Indo-Pacific region, that it's a confluence of Indian Ocean as well as Pacific Ocean. And in this corridor, Indian Ocean to the Pacific corridor, South China Sea is a major component of the Pacific corridor. It's a major junction. It's a major transit point. This enormous water space is also a transit point between two great oceans. Now, we see that with Vietnam also, port facilities were extended by Vietnam to India. After the strategic cooperation since the recent decade, 1.5 decades, especially at Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam के Cam Ranh Bay में port facilities, बंदरगाह उतारने के लिए facilities provide की गई हैं Vietnam के द्वारा. And geopolitically, if we see, Vietnam is a barrier to Chinese domination of the South China Sea, from where Beijing would be able to, Beijing, China की राजधानी, the power center of Chinese Communist Party, that would be able to project power, you see, up through the Strait of Malacca, right? Malacca Strait is another small waterway. It's like a choke point. That means around 1 or 2 kilometers of width hai, pani ka, which is at the bottom of Malaysia, Malaysia and Singapore, which is because that is surrounded by Indonesian islands, and the space is so less that it connects, rather in a way, it connects the Andaman Sea just west of the Andaman Nicobar Islands, which is also in a way part of the Bay of Bengal, with South China Sea. You see, So I mean that is one of the busiest routes. That is usually considered as the second busiest route, if I'm not mistaken, the second busiest sea route in the world. I mean, you see, so that from India's point of view, Vietnam can put pressure on China's southern areas and give China a two-front challenge. So, India's Vietnam card, India forging close relations with Vietnam, also shows its increasing profile. You see that as a very active player, that it's playing Vietnam card against China in South China Sea is a counter strike. Well, to very much to China's, if I can call it, infamous Pakistan card, which it has been playing against India, especially over the issue of Kashmir. Uh, See, and its cunning presence in the Indian Ocean, what I just talked about. So that is there. Well, next, speaking about economic partnership, if we talk about that, आर्थिक partnership जो है इंडिया के साथ साउथ ईस्ट एशियन नेशंस के साथ वो कई सदियों से है, that since ages. I mean, 1,000 years back also there was with eastern kingdoms in eastern India with kingdoms of Bali in Indonesia. Bali यात्रा होती थी. अभी कहते हैं ईस्टर्न साइड में ओडिशा के किंगडम्स के साथ बाली यात्रा कहते हैं. बाली यात्रा होती थी medieval times में. So the relations have been quite old. Now, India's foreign policy towards Southeast Asia, if you see in the economic sense, well, decision to sign deals with Vietnam in disputed waters, thereby implicitly, it supports Vietnam's claimed position. You see, it implicitly supports Vietnam's claims against China's illegal claims. It supports Vietnam's position to be against China's aggressive moves. And well, yeah, okay. I'll just cut it short. Okay, yes, I'll cut it short, please. Fine. Actually, I was given after around I think it was 10. I think it was 11:20 or something. I started. I mean, panel discussion I think went on for more than 5 minutes. Okay, I'll finish it. Well, we say that India just 5 minutes. Well, India says that well, decision to sign deals, as I told you. Now, India is having another very close alliance to form Quad. See, which is 4 nations. The Quad is a very recent, very popular this thing, informal strategic group. Now, along with the US, Japan, and Australia, and senior officials from US, India, Australia, and Japan, they have been meeting since 2003 countries, but Australia has again, and American Secretary of State in recent times, Mike Pompeo, had even said that Quad would ensure that China retains its proper place. So that's a strong diplomatic move for India. And well, I told you about the confluence of 2 Cs by Shinzo Abe, and well, Obama, even the former president, US President Obama, also had tried to have some shifting policy in, I mean, shifting pivot to Asia policy, though not implemented fully, but it was an alternative to the Belt and Road Initiative. And well, talking about Malabar, I mean, I would like to end with this, that Malabar exercise, of course, which was a trilateral exercise.
Dr. Amit, you've accidentally muted your mic again. You'll have to unmute your mic.
I think he's facing a bit of an issue with his network connectivity also. And
Yes, sir, we can hear you now.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I'll wind it up. Yeah, I was given starting time a little late. I mean, I saw the watch. So please bear. I'll finish it. Malabar excise, as we saw that since 2007, I mean, first time it went out of Asia, out of Asian seas. First, it used to be conducted in the Indian Ocean region, sometimes in the Arabian Sea, sometimes in the Bay of Bengal. Between mainly, it started between India and US, but later Japan joined excise into a trilateral excise in 2015. So subsequently, in 2019, this trilateral Malabar excise was held rather in Japan, off the coast of Japan, in September 2019, 26 September to 4th October. This year, Malabar 2020 would be taking place in Bay of Bengal, in Bay of Bengal coast of the Andaman Nicobar Islands, in the Bay of Bengal waters. And a new thing that Australia has been, is going to be an active member. It may become a permanent member of the Malabar group. I mean, as of course, a member of the informal strategic group Quad. So it means a lot. And maritime policy with which we see it here, it's little important that India's shift in maritime policies and vocal stand on the issue are signs that India will play a more direct role in South China Sea. You see, through both this Quad and Malabar, this thing. So in the end, I would conclude by saying that India's approach towards South China Sea continues to be slow, but steady. You see, बेशक थोड़ा धीरे पॉलिसी है, लेकिन निरंतर है, निरंतरता मेंटेन कर रहा है इंडिया इस रीजन में, क्योंकि बहुत मायने रखता है. And active intervention will, but actively it will intervene. मतलब अभी तक इतना वो intervene नहीं किया, लेकिन active intervention start हो जाएगा once it feels that its basic interest, इसकी basic interest अगर danger में रही, इसके basic hit अगर खतरे में रहे तो ये intervene करेगी. So that is there. But otherwise India is well aware. मतलब काफी हद तक समझती है. It's well aware of the implications of disputes in South China Sea and is monitoring it as best as it can. फिर भी देखने की कोशिश कर रहा है कि एक बैलेंस बना रहे. मतलब वियतनाम और सिंगापुर के साथ bilateral exercises भी होती है, फिलीपींस के साथ होती है. So it has been engaging with Indonesia भी होता है. But the issue is definitely outside its strategic interest directly. So it is also wise enough not to meddle in the affairs of its Southeast Asian brothers until unless to counter China, for which it has the Quad group and the Malabar group. So thank you so much. And I'm open to any kind of feedback or questions anybody may have. Thank you.
It was great to hear you, Dr. Mishra. South China Sea is mystical to many, and they don't understand the importance of the geographical location of this part in the world. Trade is one part, natural resources are the other part. Certainly, it's a major junction, and it is our equalizer to the Chinese aggression on our northern borders. Sometimes we probably enter into South China to actually equalize our affairs which are going on our northern borders, where China has its own interests, both political and military and trade. And so we probably enter into the South China Sea, something that was referred by Dr. Mohit also in his discourse. I think close relation with Vietnam is good for India, and how well we can maintain these relations either with Vietnam or Sri Lanka is a point to understand. This brings us to a very important juncture in the conclave, and we also have a sort of an equalizer in our neighborhood in form of Nepal, and Nepal has actually become a piece of land wherein probably we are confronting. There is a contestation going on between India and China, And so we have Dr. Prashant Kumar, who will be enlightening us on the pattern of strategic contestation in Nepal between both India and China. So I invite Dr. Prashant Kumar to start the discourse.
Thank you, Dr. Nishant. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nishant. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity
Yes, please.
to extend my heartfelt thanks to Honorable Chairman of Prestige Institute of Management and Research, Dr. Davis Jain, sir, and Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Anil Vajpayee, sir, and very distinguished panelist members, and Dr. Nishant, especially Dr. Kamlesh and Dr. Nakul, for cobbling together such a wonderful galaxy of panelists and scholars in these 2 days of India China seminar. And here I would like to take this opportunity also to one of my dearest friend. Special thanks to Kamlesh, especially for cajoling, coaxing, goading me continuously for speaking.
Kamlesh, somehow we have missed Dr. Prashant.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, I'm trying to reach.
Yeah.
सर वो मेरे ख्याल से नहीं देव नहीं है, साथ में है.
He's probably rejoining.
Yes.
Dr. Prashant, could you unmute yourself?
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, आपका mic
Am
mute
I
हो गया
able
था.
to?
Yes.
Yeah. Somehow I lost my connection. Extremely sorry. This is like technology is still very uncertain, but we are living in a very uncertain time as well. So we have to bear with this fact somehow.
Absolutely.
So as I was stating that everybody is aware about being Nepal as the newest fledgling republic, and I think in the last decade or so, since I think 2006, Nepal has gone through tremendous, I would say, epoch-making, century-defining kind of changes, especially in the wake of declaring Nepal as a secular republican nation state in South Asia. And I think that the kind of time frame which any post-colonial societies in South Asia has taken for bringing such a metamorphosis
हेलो नकुल सर.
Yes, Kamlesh sir.
सर हम ये सर वापस से डिस्कनेक्ट हो गए हैं क्या शायद?
Sir, actually sir connected है, but उनके phone का network का issue है. So he's using a handheld device, and if you give him a call right now, तो फिर और problem होगा because sir is back. Sir, you have to again unmute yourself, Dr. Prashant. Yes, sir.
Am I audible again? Sorry,
Yes, sir.
sorry, extremely.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No problem, sir. Everybody facing challenges. We acknowledge the fact that it's a difficult time. No problem,
But
sir.
and I think we must have this kind of very contesting idea that how of late, when Sukhdev Mani, one of the important Nepal expert, is saying that India and Nepal share the best of the closest, probably the closest neighborhood relationship, which is unprecedented in any part of the world. Even we have like a success saga story of European Union in the last 50 years or so. But if you go by the history and the genealogy, the kind of commonality between India and Nepal, I think that is unprecedented anywhere in the world. But again, one of the important, I think, enigma also came in the simultaneous questioning that why it is so that Southeast Asia, especially India and Nepal, being so common in terms of culture, affinity, religion, history, the way we speak, the way we eat. This is also equally true for, say, for instance, Pakistan. I think sometimes, and I have, the fortune to have my fieldwork and my PhD based on Nepal. So I have traveled and spent considerable time in Kathmandu and other part of Nepal as well. And I think it is like moving back again, like in any Hindi-speaking city of India alone. Say for instance, Patna or Kolkata or Banaras or Ranchi or Delhi is not something which is like diametrically opposite in our collective imagination, say from Janakpur or Kathmandu as such. And this is something which is very, very unique. Despite of this unprecedented amount of similarity, why we are not being able to have a very robust, functioning, reliable kind of relationship? That is one question which I want to begin my presentation with. I would be very short and very crisp, given the time constraints and everything. We are already well past our time limit framework. So I will be very crisp in answering these few one, two, three questions. I think of late we must have realized this fact that somehow Indo-centric South Asian region has been given a kind of fledgling presence of China of late in the last 20 years or so, which is like, and China is in their strategic thinking wants India to be confined within this region somehow. And of late, they have a kind of, after this BRI initiative, they have started to, start a new policy, which we call like China 3.0 in terms of security metrics and security threat perception. Nepal happens to be a third new security parameters, a new kind of security perception difference, where you have altogether Arunachal Pradesh, Ladakh, and then Nepal could be like served as a third security threat perception in terms of Indian engagement in Nepal. Another important point is that sometimes the small power, big power syndrome, sometimes a kind of what you call Napoleonic effect in international politics, where any small country which is like, facing its gigantic neighbor. And I think in the collective imagination of Nepal has been always been facing this kind of existential dilemma. And they call themselves like a flower between two giant boulders. Right from the Shah dynasty, the founder of modern Nepal, Prithvi Narayan Shah in 1768, they were talking about in these two terms. So it is like a small power, big power symmetry that Nepal is trying to, pledge its muscle and try to, maneuver its kind of aggressive posturing and aggressive, diplomatic stance, especially I think in the behest of the Chinese, influence. Primarily from a point of view that Chinese were trying to another kind of, dilemmatic existential psychological perceptions to be infused in Nepalese mind now. Another important factor is China. Apart from China is Nepal's internal politics. Of late, we have, I would say, not so successful stand of India's foreign policy, that in South Asian's capital across our 5, 6 neighboring countries, we have found that the intelligentsia, especially one section of civil society and certain political vested interests, of late try to assert their aggressive nationalistic discourses and narratives based entirely on anti-India bashing. And somehow this is one of the failure of, I think, South Bloc, and especially our foreign policy, that we have allowed it to happen in last 30 years or so, that the more chest thumping, anti-Indian political rhetoric and polemics are somehow, it's like a new vote garner and new vote pullers across the South Asian capital. I have seen it myself in talking to the political policy circle people in Kathmandu. They have seen that you are always like a big brother, and this is something like which is like very psychological, which is something which is like somehow being, I think, nursed upon by certain wounded past and certain imaginative present as well. Sometimes it is real, sometimes it is concocted. So this is again a kind of what you call strategic perception mismatch between Nepal and India, that you try to do a big brother, a kind of arm twisting, muscle flexing kind of attitude. And third important point, which I think is very also important in the sense that how of late we have in the last 70 years or so, when we are like sometimes Nepal is saying tragically that we are India locked. And our foreign minister secretary, I think one of the famous foreign secretaries, Mr. Menon, Shiv Shankar Menon, used to say that you are not India locked, you are rather India linked by three possible corners. And you can have, the most favored nation trade transit treaty and the 1950 treaty, which is now again being in the question. And India is continuously being pushed forward to becoming like an expansionist power, like an imperialist power. And historically, in the last 1 decade or so, when we closely monitor the kind of trade imbalance between these two countries over the contestation, I think India's investment trajectory, India's engagement with Nepal is more like now historically being emotional, ideological, transactional. And on the Chinese side, it is always based on a very capital intensive, it is always based on a certain, economic diplomacy based logic, because they are aware about the fact that we cannot match India in terms of its strategic depth and emotional bonding and the kind of commonality which an average Nepali and average Indian shares, right? But based on the recent, political developments in Nepal, we are aware about this fact that Lipu Lake and Limpiadura and Kalapani are three bone of contention nowadays in the Nepalese perception, and they are continuously, posing towards a kind of aggressive, expansionist power, charges being leveled against India. Well, we have to understand the small power syndrome psyche first, but we cannot go very far in terms of, working with Nepal and always, nursing their wounds in terms of saying that, well, we are somehow have some strategic blunders in the past as such. I think in these recent developments where KP Oli in his, consolidating his, altogether dwindling political base way back their home, is trying to assert his political legitimacy through a new, and under the open behest of Chinese ambassador as such. Now, it is very much clear. I think during my PhD days, the most prominent charge which any average Indian and average academia is facing at that time was facing at that time about the fact that your ambassador is visible on the national daily television every day, as if like they are like the second powerful person in the country, vis-a-vis the prime minister or the king as such. Now I think the same, and in a more open and I think declared manner, the Chinese ambassador is clearly visible to maneuver all kind of political jostling and trying to connect the Unified Communist Party of Nepal together and trying to make and very recently, I think just only day before yesterday, the news is coming that somehow Mr. Oli is successful to save, at least for the time being, his chair for the time being. And somehow Mr. Prachand and Mr. Oli is trying to, join hand in hand together up to at least November. So somehow it is very much visible that Nepal's new aggressive posturing, somehow it is very much visible that Nepal's new border-related skirmishes, there are news coming in the last week or so, where you will be finding that Nepalese armed forces has opened fire across the Bihar border and everywhere. And this is something becoming like, if you remember the history, this is something like becoming a new Bangladesh, where Bangladesh Rifle has opened fire on the BSF people in the past. And we as a nation is trying to, somehow assert again that no, Kala Pani is historically in the records and everything, and lies within the Indian territory. And I have seen it many times during my interaction with Nepalese policy circles and political class, elite people, that there are always this kind of feeling that there should be an idea of a greater Nepal. And they are talking, and invoking the idea of Sugauli Treaty and 1816 engagement. Even in this case, the recent imbroglio, they are invoking the very idea that Sugauli Treaty in words and spirit must be followed in terms of Kalapani. So, I think the factual development, because everybody is, very much well connected somehow with the Pashupatinath and Pokhara and Nepal is like, always keep lingering in our somehow religious and cultural imagination. So I will try to sum up, the things. I want to say that why, despite having kind of similarity, unprecedented similarity, where experts are saying that this is world's closest relationship, because they are allowed to have the job here, they're allowed to be like a civil servant services here, they're allowed to be like in our armed personnel people. How this entire gamut of Indian interaction and Indian engagement in terms of development partnership in Nepal is somehow being sidelined now, and Chinese influence is gaining momentum. I think the important line, borderline different marker is that Chinese had unprecedented amount of wherewithal, necessary financial wherewithal also to invest and infuse into Nepalese developmental patterns. Now they are like trying to construct a Kerung Kathmandu and Lhasa Kathmandu railway network there. And one important thing I think which is not being known by each and every Nepal watcher as such, I want to highlight here that they are very smart enough to locate their financial development in so much strategically well positioned places that their amplifying impact is such a huge one. So I will just give you 1, 2, 3 examples. So Nepal is trying to construct and I already constructed an inner ring road across the Kathmandu Valley, and they are now trying to construct an outer ring road also, which is so well maintained. They are trying to construct a civil services hospital. Even the parliament building, the makeshift parliament building, where the parliament of Nepal is functioning right now, is a kind of convention center earlier under the Chinese influence and under the Chinese cooperation. So the entire political elites, say for instance, it is rather a political class or a bureaucratic class, the moment they enter into Kathmandu Valley, and the moment they enter in their financial and political and transactional and working places, say for instance parliament or different ministries or for their health services like in the civil services hospital. We have also constructed a Tribhuvan University in the past. We have also constructed a Veer hospital there in the past. But the strategic implication and the kind of what you call psychological semi subconscious kind of impinging of idea of Chinese having better transactional and financial wherewithal in Nepal is way ahead in terms of its amplifying impact vis-a-vis India. Another important factor in terms of translating the MOUs and translating all the designated bilateral treaties into reality. Chinese records are much better in terms of their no nonsense attitude and their kind of swift and smart action based on ground. We have, say for instance, we can take an example of Mahakali, which was considered like a game changer, given the the huge financial implications and given the kind of opulence and the richness which it may offer in terms of Nepalese political perception and economic prosperity. It was like 1996 treaty signed between India and Nepal government, which was not still being done a kind of minimum a DPR, a detailed project report so far. This is something which is very surprising and a very sad state of affairs, given the situation that we are not being able. Say for instance, a kind of I will give you another example about this whole issue of water management and flood management, which is like creating havoc every time in the neighboring state of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, right? So these are like very small, perceptive, transactional issues which needs to be taken care of in terms of growing influence of. Another important factor is about this rise of, I would say, Confucius schools and making the Mandarin Chinese as the mandatory language in some private and government schools in Nepal. Again, I would say that right from a very financial and a very transactional development partnership, now China is shifting its goalpost and trying to construct a new cultural constituency as well in Nepal as such. They are trying to construct another constituency as such in the terms of rising of a Chinese language institute, naming ambiguously in the Confucius Institute. Most of the Chinese border people, especially I have the privilege to visit at the China border as well in Nepal, which is at the Keung highway there, Kodari highway. And if you go by the Tarai belt, where Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and Bengal and Sikkim and Uttarakhand, these 5 states are neighboring to Nepal, there you will also find a new mushrooming growth of so-called Confucius centers in the nondescript, tents and mud houses and all the pakka and kacha houses. And everybody is trying to become like a mini Chinese language expert, given the fact that now Chinese are surpassing India in terms of this annual tourist visit also. 2020 surprisingly is a visit Nepal here in Chinese trade and fair imagination. So going by all the small and big facts, you can easily understand that China is trying really level very hard to compete India and beat India in terms of its not only capital intensive, developmental intensive, bilateral intensive, kind of area, but also in the traditional fields of culture, traditional fields of, history, traditional fields of cuisine and food. Another important factor which I want to highlight here, and here I will wrap up my things, my presentation, that historically you will be witnessing that Banaras, where I am sitting, and Kolkata, Delhi, Patna, these happens to be like the important centers for learning and political training also for all the Nepalese intelligence and political class. Now, in the wake of this post-globalization, where most of the Nepalese are like migrating to Gulf countries and China, especially for education and some job opportunities, I think still we are hosting more than 1 million Nepalese in terms of its diaspora, in terms of its migrant population. But it's still now the traditional edge, which we have got. I think my university, BHU, has the privilege to host at least 3 modern Nepalese prime ministers in terms of their education and everything. Entire Nepalese Congress has this history. Even the Communist Party of Nepal had its history, very rich history in terms of its Kolkata connection or Banaras connection. Now we are losing that for the first time. And I don't know why India cannot offer a kind of what you call equal parity treatments to Nepalese students in terms of payment, in terms of fee, in terms of all the scholarship. We have did it in past, and we are doing it same with the Afghanistan. I don't know why, but I think talk to any average Nepalese students, and they are still willing to catch up with the Indian educational, signing institutions and all. But they are very sad to hear that on any foreign student's account, we are also being supposed to pay in the dollars, US dollars, all the payments and fees and scholarship and everything. So this is another sad state of affairs. So given by all the facts and figures, I think we must, take this opportunity to engage actively in Nepal, to win out Nepal from this, I think fast growing Nepalese influence with the China's engagement. And we can do it with, sincerely engaging and making our Nepal policy transactional, time bound, and functional on the ground, apart from any rhetoric and historical connections and everything. Thank you very much for listening me and giving me this opportunity. Over to Nissan.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for your wonderful session, and especially for enlightening.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Am I audible to you? This is Nakul, sir. Dr. Prashant.
Yes, sir. I'm able to.
Yeah. Okay.
Hear you.
So I would like to thank you for delivering such an enlightening session on the issues that are going on in Nepal, especially in relation to the contention between India and China with regards to Nepal. Sir, before I pass on the torch to the participants to ask the questions, I have one question, if you permit.
Sure.
Sir, actually, like you mentioned that the relationship between India and Nepal has been a very long-term relationship. It's been a very old relationship, and we somehow know the nature of China, that once China starts financially supporting a country, China is very predatory in its nature. So, for example, when China wanted its base in Pakistan, so it did not request for the base; it literally asked for it. And everybody in the world is aware of the fact that once China supports a country, then it influences the policies of that particular country. So it's a two-folded question that I'm asking. The first part of my question is that despite this fact, why is Nepal trying to side with China? That is the first part of my question. That despite these practices or these predatory practices, why is Nepal trying to side with China? One. And two, what is, according to you, the general sentiment of the Nepalese population in this respect? The common man in Nepal, if you can shed light on his perspective about what is going on.
Common man's perspective.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Nakul.
Yes, sir. There are two questions.
The second part of your question, can you repeat it?
Yes, sir. The second part of my question is that according to you, what is the sentiment of the common man in Nepal, whether they are pro India or pro Chinese, whether they welcome Chinese intervention in Nepalese policies or in the economy of Nepal, or whether they are still wanting to side with India?
Thank you so much, Nakul, for your wonderful insight and question. As far as your first part of question is concerned, hello, are you able to listen me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay. So, as far as the first part of your question is concerned, I think Nepal is very much, if you go by the Nepalese news websites and all the newspapers in the last 2 months, you will be listening a kind of parallel discourse also in some parts of media, some sections of media, that BRI and the whole initiative, and you know that Nepal is one of the signatory of this BRI, that are we trying to become another Pakistan as such, in terms of like falling prey to the debt trap of China? This is also a question which is being asked continuously. But because if you look at the proposed Kerung Kathmandu train network, the estimated cost of this 170-kilometer railway network, which will be one of the toughest rail network in the world, given the fact that it is, crossing through the entire Himalayan region. 98% of the railway, proposed railway, there are not very much takers of this, successful implementation of this railway as such. 98% of the railway network will be under the tunnel. So you can, easily imagine the kind of idea and, what is the bumpy road lies ahead in terms of, successful implementation of this proposed network. So there are, a parallel section of Nepalese intelligentsia and civil society and political class who are equally aware about this predatory and, deep trap diplomacy of China as such. Another important fact, and which is linked to your second part of your question, that if you travel across, the length of Nepal, you will be finding that China is still a very, far-fetched territory. They know only the Chinese goods as such, as we do know, right? But China, as it is like, absence in our, collective imagination as such. But India is a real fact. Most of the Nepalese has the wish to, travel and take a holy dip in Ganga. Most of the Nepalese are, performing their last rite somehow in the river banks. We share 80-90% of our religious, community. Nepal is predominantly Hindu as such. And average Nepalese, which is still to somehow a Char Dham Yatra or travel to Rameswaram or Puri or Kedarnath or Badrinath. But this is something which is absent in terms of like Chinese imagination. China is something for an average Nepali, it is like a 4,000 kilometer away mega country, which has no as such similarity and connection in terms of average Nepalese imagination. So we have this strategic and I think, historical advantage vis-a-vis, I would say, a perception management scenario in terms of China. But despite of this fact, why Nepal is continuously playing and, trying to sit in the laps of China, primarily because of late in the last, I think, 50 years or so, if you watch closely the policy of Nepal, right from King Mahendra's, you will be finding that Nepal is trying to somehow outsmart India and Nepal both in terms of having the maximum bargain by saying that I will sit on another's influence, zone of influence, if you give this kind of financial and transactional bargain. So this is something which is a bargain politics and trying to, have the maximum leverage in terms of, a continuous engagement. Moreover, Nepal is committed. I think there is a policy called from the King Birendra at the time, way back in 1994, that Nepal should be declared as a zone of peace between India and China. And that was being not supported by India as such, primarily because India do not want to lose its extended, sphere of influence in terms of Nepal as such. But now Nepal is trying in a very smart kind of tactical diplomatic game, where under the threat perception that I will, work and make like a platform against another country, they're trying to financial leverage as such from both countries. So that is very much, tactical and diplomatic as such also. As far as the second part of your question is concerned, I think I have answered it already. One thing, if you travel across the Tarai, the Madhesh region, you will be finding that there are not many takers. I mean, China is like something like a non-entity in their imagination, in their subconscious as such, right? It's like a beti roti ka samman. It's like an umbilical cord relation between India and Nepal. Every day you will be finding that there are people, who are having, common relationship, blood relationship and all that. Now, Nepal is trying to stop that by implementing a new policy. That before that, the policy was that even any Indian woman or an Indian man who's like married to Nepalese citizen automatically will be given a citizenship. Now, apart from like any other foreign nationals, even Indians are supposed to have a minimum 7 years of residential period in Nepal, and then only he or she will be given and granted a naturalized patterns of citizenship. So this is clearly, playing in the hands of China as such. And But I think we have to, understand as such also that there is always a consociational approach to Nepal as well, not always confrontational as such. There is one former ambassador, Ranjit Rai, who's continuously arguing the fact that maybe sometimes we are trying to, play megalomaniac kind of security threat perception in terms of Nepal, emanating from Nepal. Rather, we can also try to have a trilateral, cooperation, and how India and China can join hand together vis-a-vis supporting Nepal in terms of its legitimate developmental aspirations as such in the region. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering my question.
Nakul,
Yes, sir.
Nakul, I have both a question as well as an answer. The answer I will say first, and that is to Anirban Datta from Kolkata, who has asked a question to Dr. Devish Jain regarding why the few companies that have moved out of China have gone to countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan, and only 3 have come to India. Now, Dr. Devish Jain conveys the answer, so I will quote. He says that there are a few things that we need to change. We have to change the work attitude, which was part of his address in the beginning when he said that the Chinese women, the Chinese workers, the Chinese attitude towards work is all that has led to this great revolution where they have become the world's biggest manufacturing hub. And the second part he says is once we change all this, there is nothing that will stop India from taking away all the business of the world. The other thing he says is Vietnam and Taiwan, they are both practically Chinese in nature. So their culture, their ability to work full time, their proximity to the Chinese vendors and everything is such that the companies who've drawn themselves out of China found that this was the lowest hanging fruit, and so therefore they have come there. The last part of his question was, Anirban, I hope you're listening. The last part of your question is, how will COVID affect all this? See, it's a very, very difficult question to answer because we don't know how long COVID-19 is going to last, whether it will get over in 20, 21, 22, when. But the world is watching at this point in time, and the world is not very patient. So they will watch for a little more time, and after which they will take action. So there are thousands of companies in China, and they are obviously parented in various parts of the world, and they are all watching. They will see which way the cookie crumbles, the word again used by Dr. Devish Jain in his address, and then they will take a call, unquote. So that was the quote unquote what Dr. Devish Jain wishes to convey. Now the question that I have, and that is for any of the panelists who may wish to respond, and that is, China is an aging population. The average age of a Chinese is much more, is 40 years plus, which is much more than the average age of an Indian, which is minus 30. And therefore, this Galwan thing that they have done is in my opinion, a very, very bad step. Blunder, because India was the source of labor, cheap labor, which was needed in their factories to take their industrial revolution up and zooming. And by displeasing 1.5 billion Indians, they have made a mistake, which I don't think can be rectified very easily. So in fact, it's hatred. It's not displeasure. It's hatred. So anybody, whether Amit ji or Prashant ji or Mohit ji, anybody wishes to respond to this, please do so. Thank you.
Amit sir, you'll have to unmute your mic.
Yes, am I audible now?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. May I know sir's name, please, first?
Sir, he's Dr. Anil Bajpai, and he's the Chief Operating Officer of the Prestige University.
Okay. Bajpai Saab, I would like to take this question that, well, China, I agree, has done, I mean, one of the greatest blunders. I mean, not even just a blunder, one of the greatest blunders by, again, I mean, by displeasing India and again showing the worst part of its aggression. I mean, it's one. I feel it's a way of saving its face over the biological weapons sort of thing what it had tried to make in wake of I mean in the shape of corona, and which has still not stopped. I mean, it was in the process of making another virus, this thing. So just to save its extremely tarnished face as one of the, turning into a rogue nation from an aggressor nation. I mean, it was looked at a different kind of respect as an economic superpower a few years back, but it has turned into a rogue nation by this, come in the list of well, what was at a time given the name as South Sudan or North Korea, but it's no less worse than them. I mean, almost in the lines of what Hitler was doing, or later Pol Pot was doing in Cambodia. Well, second, it's growing. I mean, it's again, it's persisting policy of territorial. I mean, greed. You see, territorial aggrandizement, compromising all ethical standards and values. So that's an extension of that, which has no ethical basis, as clearly seen in for the region of Tibet. I mean, our university had been made with that vision only. Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies was made with that vision of rescuing Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan culture when Dalai Lama came to India. So it's that is one of the clearest signs, and you can very well see what's happening in Xinjiang now. I mean, it's a kind of implosion which is happening. It tried to make biological explosions all over the world. I mean, जैविक हथियारों को बना के, I mean, tried to just create havoc. At least thanks in our country to the timely decisions and overture by the government that नहीं तो पता नहीं करोड़ों का हो गया होता. I mean, they would have gone. But many other countries of Europe and, well, United States was not that lucky. I mean, the people didn't take it properly, or maybe in the leadership part, it was not quite serious. But anyways, so that is seen in Xinjiang. What is happening? I mean, it's going to again a worst part. What will happen in the next coming months? Also, it's hard to say. So in this, I mean, continuous unpopularity, it's being seen. What's happening in Hong Kong? I mean, such a tiny island. Uh, if you see, I mean, the kind of tough reaction it showed to the Chinese, decision makers, the Chinese communist militia. So, I mean, by their enforcing tough laws, by their just totalitarian attitude they have shown to Hong Kong. And why not to talk about Taiwan? I mean, the way that Taiwan is trying to assert itself as a different culture, though it may be having similarities, but of course it has a different history. I mean, language commonness may be there, but still they're more in terms of Western values and Western modes of education. And right from beginning, it had a different entity. Right from being of communist China as a nation itself, Taiwan was rather the first form of China which was recognized as a permanent member of the P5, one of the P5 members of the Security Council. I mean, such a tiny spot in the South China Sea. And well, I mean, that was only in 1971 that China got recognized, communist China got recognized in the Security Council. Otherwise, it was being treated as a pariah state in, in many ways, in the Western lenses. So you were saying, I mean, many of its policies, often its policies, starting from Mao and Chow En-lai when he was the premier, to, I mean, when it was the worst part of it was seen in Cultural Revolution. So definitely China is a loser in the long term. So that is nothing unusual about it. And economy, so और countries का भी suffer हो रहा है, it's suffering, but China will also equally suffer. I mean, its suzerainty and it's sort of that paramountcy it was trying to make all over the world, that is further exposed. I mean, already it has angered US, one of its major market, and India, again one of its major markets. So India will find alternatives, and other
Yes, of course.
countries who will follow suit.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I feel that India, apart from being a 3% export participant from the Chinese market business, is potentially the biggest market for China for the next 20 years in the neighborhood.
Oh yes. Yes,
I want to add, very quick two lines only. So Dr. Vajpayee.
The software goods, that would be.
Dr. Prashant, we can hear you.
Yeah. I want to just add only two lines for Dr. Vajpayee's, question. One is that, China shares like probably the highest number of countries in terms of, international border. And you are aware about the fact that China is having only border-related contestation with India only right now. And somehow they go on to settle, except I think Vietnam and India, they have settled in all the border disputes across the Chinese region as such. So this is something which is very tactical, it is strategically well planned strategy from Chinese perception that they want to confine India within the South Asian.
Dr. Prashant, you've got muted again. You'll have to unmute yourself. Yes. Now we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Now we can hear you.
In terms of, okay. So in terms of having, engagement with India, they want to just confine India within the South Asian region as such, because India is also nursing this ambition of becoming a rising power in Asian power matrix as such. And China do not want that somehow. So that is something which is easily visible from the, military skirmishes and kind of, I would say, limited tactical use of power as such also, right? So they want to just send a small, strategic signal as such to India and, to the rest of the world also, that in terms of, as such. To go by the history of China-India engagement in terms of border talks, this is something which is very deliberately being done by China, that they created such a large-scale map on their perception, that such a thick line of map making. Any cartographer or geographer will second my opinion, that you can easily draw any map and one line can denote like 20 kilometers of area as such. So deliberately they did that in the past as such, just to make it like a non-functional, make it like a transactional, make it like, deliberately not a kind of what you call clearly established line of actual control termed as a line of international border as such. So they make it such a deliberate ambiguity in terms of their direction of India. So this is another factor.
Thank you for responding, Dr. Prashant and Dr. Amit, and thank you, Dr. Vajpayee, for posing the question. I would now take up some questions that have been asked by the participants. So the first question that we've received is from Sejal Chablani, and her question is to Dr. Nayal. Dr. Nayal, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. So I'll just share the question that she's asked. Her question is that with respect to recent diplomatic conversations between India and China regarding Galwan Valley, and wherein both the countries decided to move 2 kilometers back, does this mean that this 2 to 4 kilometers of area is no longer a part of Indian territory, or does this mean that we are giving up this territory?
First, in case my voice gets metallic, please let me know. I would like that my voice continues in the same manner without any interruption. So I will reconfirm your question. You wish to know that the kind of agreement we have reached in Galwan does it compromise Indian territorial claim?
Yes, sir.
Or have we in any way compromised?
Yes,
The
sir.
answer is no. We have done no compromise. Now, if you look at Galwan, till this particular occurrence, Galwan issue was never on the table as a topic of conflict between India and China. However, having said so, Galwan has its own strategic importance because this region gives accessibility towards region which India occupies, that is Siachen, which on the other side has Pakistan. So it is strategically an important area. India would not like that area to start having build-ups. China in Galwan Valley had developed a lot of build-ups in terms of their military might which was coming up. So to put things at rest, there are treaties which are taking place. I mean, there are some level of talks which are taking place. So what you talk as a pull-out, there is no compromise on the territorial integrity as of now. That is the status, and that will be maintained.
Thank you for answering the question, sir. I hope, Sejal, your doubt has been clarified. The next question is from Shireen Khan, and her question is to Dr. Prashant. Dr. Prashant, kindly unmute yourself. Thank you, sir.
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'll be sharing the question now. Sir, I would like to know about strategy of China on being or showing friendly nature by having large investment and providing incentives, and Nepal attacking India indirectly and China on the top of it. Are they together planning to go against India?
Thank you. Shireen or Sejal?
Shireen, this is
Thank you, Shireen.
Yes.
Thank you, Shireen, for asking such a wonderful question. It's really insightful and to know about this growing, I would say, reparity between China and Nepal as such also. But again, I would like here to mention two very substantive facts. One, China of late is trying to encircle, that's pulse of the string theory as such also. So China is trying of late to encircle India from its different neighborhood as such. And when Mr. Modi Saab came into power in 2014, he was like firmly opinionated in this perception that we should have like a neighborhood policy first, neighborhood first policy and extended neighborhood policy as such. And you are aware about the fact that Mr. Modi chose to have the first foreign visit to Nepal only in terms of his inaugural of his prime ministership as such. And so far he has visited thrice to Nepal. There was a time when up to like 17 long years, prime ministers could not find an opportunity to travel to Nepal as such. So in India's strategic thinking and in its present ruling dispensation, Nepal is really, really important as such, because they are aware, and as I have told you, that there are some strategic circle people who are talking about Chinese security 3.0. It's like a third version of impending Chinese threat perception vis-a-vis Arunachal, then Ladakh and Galwan, and then Nepal could be like a third frontier as such also. And remember one important strategic importance of Nepal also, that even Pakistan question is involved into Nepal as such also. And not many people are knowing that Nepal now is offering a kind of visa on arrival to an average Pakistani, right? So it's like a joint kind of threat perception coming from border related threat perception, threat management issues, and some economic ties, which is also at the loggerheads. So it is not feasible as such, because in terms of strategic mismatch between China and Nepal on many possible ways. China is simply trying to raise Nepal like a new hostile country in the region, against as such India, to be used in the later periods of time by actively engaging and somehow entering into its domestic political realms and trying to have what you call controlled stability factors in Nepalese politics. Last 30 years or so, India was trying to have a policy what you call controlled instability, right, in Nepal, where not many governments could turn up and complete their terms. I think in the last 30 years or so, Nepal has witnessed more than 20 prime ministers as such, right? So now Nepal is trying to locate China in terms of their collective imagination as a stability partner, as a country who can guarantee their political stability as such also, which is something which is challenged by pro-Indian and a very robust, thriving civil society and political networks also, especially from the Madhya region. So there are contestation indeed going on, but I think it will take time, and we can still, marching ahead of time and try to counter the Chinese growing influence in the region. Thank you so much. I think I'm being able to clarify your some doubts.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant, for answering this question. The next question is posted by Anirban Datta, and his question is to Dr. Mishra. Dr. Mishra, kindly unmute yourself. Yeah. Can you hear me, sir?
Am I there? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So,
am I audible?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. What is the question?
Anirban's question is that what is the relevance of US-India relation in the context of South China Sea, where the terms have been used extensively, in 2010 as well as in 2015 joint statement, and has been dropped later. Will India and Vietnam be competitors in attracting outgoing industries from China? And just give me a moment. It's a long question, actually. Yeah.
Is it the first question?
Yeah. So Vietnam be competitors in attracting outgoing industries from China? If yes, will the competition hamper India's Act East policy? So this is the question that has been posted by Anirban.
Okay. Okay. Well, there's a clear answer to it, a very straight answer to it, though not very straight, but it doesn't have much complications as well. Well, regarding competition of Vietnam and India for outgoing companies from China, I really don't think it may happen, because definitely there is a competition for. I mean, there is a sense of competition always prevails. On oil, there has been competition even among the Asian nations. But Vietnam definitely realizes its potentials. He knows that it has a lot to benefit India's strategic presence, or its economic, even its economic developments is still far way beyond their economic standards of development. And it very much would not find it as a direct competitor, because they also have to realize that their overpower their common strategic rival, China. Oversight South China has been a great stimulating factor for India to come further closer to Vietnam, and Vietnam to come further closer to India, by allowing port facilities in Cam Ranh Bay, and to have its training sessions, joint training sessions with India in its marine borders, in its maritime areas in the Arabian Sea. And often, army exchanges have been there among the officers for training purposes, and Indian officers have gone to Vietnam to train them. So that sort of very close parlays which have been taking place, some companies rather, India definitely has more potential to attract more companies. But whatever companies wish to come to Vietnam, that should not pose, I mean, an adversary to India, to India's, and a thorn to anyway limiting factor to India's relations with Vietnam, but rather by a title as diamond, India's diamond in the very much I mean it's on the active role made by Prime Minister Modi. So that very much would find roots in forging close relations. So they would all get on together to have a more healthy relationship, maritime relationship, economic relationship. Rather, even during Southeast Asian, when with ASEAN region, India already had become a full dialogue partner. It is almost in the process of being a full permanent member, though yet it is not so. So they are natural allies, and they will take hands on together, and they will both will try to mutually benefit. I mean, though be it the South China Sea dispute, or be it China just having at loggerheads with the rest of the world economically. So, I mean, they should all go well together. So it should be a win-win situation, I feel. It should not be a zero-sum game. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for answering the question. Anirban, I hope your doubt has been resolved. The next question is to Dr. Nayal once again.
I wish. Yes.
Dr. Nayal?
Yes, please, I can hear you.
Yeah. So the question is from Aman Porwal, and his question is: should India look to complete pending BRO projects in Arunachal Pradesh region as soon as possible, and even look for bigger projects like DRDBO road in that specific northeast region?
There are two parts, so I will take on. I hope Aman is in attendance. Firstly, regarding the BRO projects which are on, probably the issue has got into news in the latest conflict times. But BRO has been on with this kind of a job. I believe he specifically asked about Arunachal Pradesh. So coming to Arunachal Pradesh, land procurement was always an issue. But the government intent was always there to ensure that we have easy access to the remotest area in Arunachal Pradesh. Keeping that in light, the BRO from last 10 odd years has been very actively trying to map and ensure that as far as they are concerned, their things are in place. Point one. If you remember, the prior Chief of Army Staff, General J.J. Singh, was made the governor of Arunachal Pradesh. And the entire objective of putting him there was to ensure that speedy road constructions take place. In addition, there were dams which are supposed to come. However, if you have been following Arunachal Pradesh, Greenpeace NGO had been very critical about India's undertaking dam projects there because they said it will displace the ecology. In spite of the government's intent, there were problems. However, the present government of the day has more assertiveness. There is a greater clarity to ensure that these projects roll on. So therefore, in spite that there do exist local problems of land procurement and other issues, there is no doubt that these projects are not happening. They are rather happening at high speed, whether it is Arunachal Pradesh, whether it is areas in Northeast or anywhere. In coming years, we will see better connectivity, better things taking place, and we are not getting intimidated by Chinese activity. And that is one of the reasons they are heavily worried about it. So they have been objecting to the visit of the Home Minister to Arunachal Pradesh. They have been objecting to issues which are taking place in J&K. But as far as India is concerned, we would go ahead. In the coming years, there will be huge infrastructure which will figure up in all these states which are in the remote border areas. I hope I've been able to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there's another question posed to you from another participant of ours. Her name is Devyani Sharma, and her question to you is: how does the US seem to benefit by deploying its troop in the South China Sea? Also, how will the same affect China and India individually?
Okay, I hope Devyani is in attendance. As far as US-India relation is concerned, there has been ups and downs over the years. Sometimes certain governments have been very to maintain, a very close inclination towards US and maintain their own sovereignty. Because problem comes when you become too closely aligned with US, it expects you to fall in line with their line of thinking. Whereas as far as India is concerned, we have always maintained our independence of thoughts. We would not get intimidated because of that friendship. It has taken US long to understand that it can align with India and India is looking for partnership. However, India would not stop thinking independently. With that clarity in mind, both our nations are working together. Now, there are two parts. Why is the US in South China Sea, as what was typed in the question answer? Multiple things. Point one, Korea. When Trump administration came in, they realized the gravity to which North Korean issue could flare up. So they could not walk away. Uh, President Obama tried to get TPP signed for the economic collaboration. However, the Trump administration dumped it. They further undermined the importance of the ASEAN. However, over the years, the importance of this region has again been put back in the US policy. 50% of the world trade takes place here. So it is an important area which the Americans cannot ignore. Their allies within the region, the larger allies are Japan and India, both democratic, fairly favorable for US. Considering all these aspects of economy, one, its allies, it is sensible for US to continue maintaining its presence. And at a larger framework, if you see, today there is issue of political funding which is deeply concerning US, which is Chinese money. It has happened in Australia. Today, political intervention by funding is taking place by the Chinese in various democracies, and America is not untouched. Today, 5G technology, which will be the dominating technology of the world. I mean, the next race you can call is a 5G. Whoever hits the button faster is going to dominate the world. So America cannot turn its eye from China as well as the region. So that is why they're going to be there. And the major players in this region are going to be Japan and India. So it makes all the sense to be present, especially at a time when there are some issues of crisis taking place. And that is why, if you see lately, if you've been following the Malabar exercise, we were not putting Australia into it. India had its own reservations. But again, we started talking. And America for long had wanted Australia to be the party to it. So we are looking for that multilateral systems in place so that things can be balanced. So it's a balance of power that we look as strategic partners. I hope I've been able to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your insights, and thank you for answering the participant's question. The next question is again from Sejal, but this time she has posed her question to Dr. Prashant. Dr. Prashant, kindly unmute yourself. Yeah, Dr. Prashant, can
Yes,
you?
yes.
Okay. So the question is, Sejal says that I think rather than objecting to Kathmandu's China ties, India must focus on how to advance India's relation with Nepal. What efforts Indian government has made in this regard, and what is your stance on this?
Thank you, Sejal. I hope you are in listening. Thank you so much. And I really want to elaborate it in a more extended way, but given the time constraint, I was like very short in my presentation. So thank you so much that you bring it out. I was just want to put forward 2-3 very quick and I think doable things emanating from India as such. One is that enhanced connectivity with Nepal is like need of the hour. So right now we have only 34 kilometers of railway network connecting from Bihar border to Nepal. So the talks which are going on about proposed Patna to Kathmandu rail network, we need to really work fast on that, right? So detailed project report and all the feasibility report must be quickly put in forward. Another point is that we can there is an urgent need to connect a kind of across the 1700 kilometer India Nepal borders. We need to construct at least 4-lane highways across the Nepal, which could like directly work as a common area of mutually beneficial financial engagement and mutually beneficial ideas in terms of people's and goods exchanges. Third important point, which is urgently in the need of hour, is to create and engage the constituency, people's constituency in a more constructive manner. We need to open more, revenue ports and dry ports across the Nepalese border. And we need to facilitate in terms of preferential treatment, which is earlier being offered to Nepalese goods in terms of 100% fee waiver and revenue waiver in terms of, their sustained access to international ports, especially Haldia and Kolkata, right? And the fourth important thing, which I think is the need of from our side point of view, is to be more sensitive in terms of psychological treatment, the emotional treatment. Sometimes I have seen our policy practitioners and our political class. It is really sad to witness those kind of sad stories where very small skirmishes and small kind of emotional woundings as unwantedly and unduly become something like a very bigger issues in terms of emotional scars and everything. Say for instance, one of the small example I will give you, the 1950 foundational treaty which governs India and Nepal's free access of peoples and goods and employment and residence everywhere, is being signed by the Prime Minister of Nepal, the erstwhile the Ranas of Nepal on the one hand, and on another hand, our ambassador, which is unequal in terms of even symbolic gesturing and posturing. I hope you are getting my point, that treaties must be signed between two equals, So these very symbolic, I think symbolism is also, because that politics is also all about the game of perception management. It is not only substance management, but perception management is also very important. So we need to have a very more consulted, robust management of perception vis-a-vis how we are perceived in Nepal as such, especially during into the Kathmandu elites, the political elites, the trade elites, the bureaucratic elites of Nepal. I hope I will be able to get you some sort of clarity in terms of this thing.
Thank you,
Sejal,
sir.
are you able to listen me?
Shireen, yeah, Shireen is in attendance and she has heard your response, sir. Thank you so much. And she has also responded that she understands it properly now on the chat. So the last question of the last question from the participants' end is to Dr. Amit once again. Dr. Amit, could you please unmute your mic? Dr. Amit, you'll have to unmute your mic. Amit sir, are you able to hear me?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was somehow out of the connection.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
So
Yes.
this is the final question.
Yeah, is there a question?
This question is posted by Shireen, and the question is that if at the end China goes for the cooperation to have some sovereignty, then nothing on the South China Sea, what would be the best solution, and how will the country react on it?
I couldn't get the first part of a question. Sovereignty.
I'll repeat
sovereignty.
it.
What? Can you just repeat it?
So if China is willing to compromise to have some sort of sovereignty, rather than having full sovereignty over China Sea, South China Sea, then what is the best possible solution according to you, and how will the country react to it?
Countries means what? The Southeast Asian nations, the neighboring nations.
I think she's not been clear with her question, but she means India.
Okay.
I think she means India.
Fine. Fine, fine, no problem. Okay, Shireen, I hope you're listening to me. This thing, well, let me put it this way, that first, China is a nation which doesn't want to have any sort of compromising decisions. I mean, taking on the thing that being contented with the limited sovereignty over South China Sea, uh, it already has some sovereignty over some areas of the South China Sea. I mean, legally and illegally also. I mean, I mean, that's the reality. But rather, if we give some sort of, I mean, some sort of sovereignty, having, well, that can be a compromise made between the various other players. I mean, Southeast Asian nations, that you have this much of space, you have your fishing rights here, you have your this thing. But well, one thing is always there. It's an omnipotent thing, that a natural resource, a natural uh, treasure of the earth can never be a sovereign part of any one country. I mean, not even a portion can be a sovereign part of any one thing. I mean, they're very much Austin's theory of sovereignty, that monastic theory that sovereignty is indivisible by nature. That very much applies. That if if you see that exclusive economic zone each country has, so there itself they have, and there is an international trading rights also, and an international free passage to go across the corridor to Pacific areas, and to have it has some basis there also. So it's very much, to have a free passage is a different thing, but to give sovereignty, well, it only can happen in form of a compromise. We won't call it a sovereignty, but we would call it a coexistence. Rather, I would give it as, if China is more prepared, it realizes to coexist with other nations, then very much the seascape of South China Sea, instead of being manipulated entirely and not letting other countries benefit anything, to make it a closed space, it would be an open space, and would also benefit China on the long run. It would develop China's relations. It would improve China's relations with other nations. But that is again a far thing to see, and possibilities now still what it's showing in other corners from its land frontiers, say with India or at the Bhutan side. I mean, possibilities are again being bleak. So let's hope for something brighter to come in the years to come. I hope you are satisfied, Shireen. If you're not, I mean, it's always knowledge is always prone to discussions and further discussions. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for answering this question. So before I pass on the baton to my dear colleague Kamlesh Jain to propose a vote of thanks, I would like to inform the participants and the panelists about a few things. So this is a 2-day event, and tomorrow also we'll be having sessions from Professor Shahab Enam Khan, who's from the Department of International Relations, Jahangirnagar University, Bangladesh, and he'll be speaking on future on international security and South Asia. After that, Dr. Rahul Mishra will be joining us tomorrow. He's a senior lecturer, Asia Europe Institute, University of Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. His topic will be China's footprint in Southeast Asia and what are the options for India. And finally, we'll also be joined by Dr. Ashish Shukla, who's a research fellow for Indian Council of World Affairs in Delhi, and he'll be speaking on decoding the recent Sino-India clashes in Ladakh. And last but not the least, we'll be also joined by Dr. Anil Bajpai, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Prestige University, to share his thoughts on the 2-day event and to share his opinions on the Sino-Indian relationships. So these are the speakers for tomorrow. Besides this, I would also like to mention that this is a recurring webinar, which means that you will be able to join the webinar tomorrow as well using the same link. And this goes for the panelists that are present here today also. If you are interested in listening to the speakers tomorrow, you are most welcome to join us tomorrow using the same link at the same time at 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll be more than happy to have you again. If you wish, you can listen to the speakers that will be addressing us tomorrow. And now I pass the baton to my dear colleague, Professor Kamlesh Jain, whose efforts have ensured that this webinar is held for students all around the country. Kamlesh sir, really propose.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I thank all the panelists for their valuable time. It has been a very fruitful session, and I hope the all participants has gained the knowledge from their session. So again, I thanks Dr. Mohit sir, Dr. Amit Mishra sir, Dr. Prashant sir आपने समय दिया.
Thank you. Most welcome.
और जी जी. एंड सर हमने डिस्कशन किया साउथ चाइना सी, नेपाल बेल्ट एंड रोड इनिशिएटिव के बारे में. कई सारी समस्याएं हमने देखी है जो आपने यहाँ पे पॉइंट आउट किया है. मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि एक दिन ऐसा भी आएगा जब हम इन समस्याओं से आगे बढ़ेंगे, क्योंकि जब से इंडिया इंडिपेंडेंट हुआ है हम इस बात को देख रहे हैं कि पाकिस्तान और चाइना हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी न चाहते हुए भी इन्हीं दो देशों के आसपास चल रही है. तो पाकिस्तान से तो फिर हम निपट लेते हैं, उसमें तो हमें कोई समस्या नहीं आती और हम बोलने में भी करने में भी काफी आगे हैं. मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि ऐसा एक दिन आएगा कि जब हम चाइना को भी उसका जवाब दे पाएं, जबकि हमारा कोई उसमें हमने उसके साथ कोई गलत व्यवहार नहीं किया, कोई हमारा गलत रोल नहीं रहा उसके साथ. तो मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि एक ऐसा दिन भी आएगा जब हम चाइना को जवाब दे पाएं और हम हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी थोड़ा मूव ऑन करें इससे आगे की तरफ. जो हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं 1991 में भी, अभी 14 में हमारे मोदी जी भी जो चाहते हैं कि हम अदर कंट्रीज की तरफ जाएं, इजराइल की तरफ जाएं, जो मिडिल ईस्ट की कंट्री है वहां की तरफ जाएं. लेकिन उसके लिए जरूरी है कि चाइना ने जो है हमको एक ट्रैप किया हुआ है, इस ट्रैप से हम बाहर निकलें. और मैं उम्मीद ही कर सकता हूँ जैसा वो फैज साहब ने कहा है, मैंने ये सब सीखा है प्रशांत सर से कि वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी. तो वो सुबह कभी आए इस उम्मीद के साथ मैं फिर से एक बार सभी का धन्यवाद. मोहित सर आपका भी, आपने आपका समय दिया, बहुत वैल्यूबल. और सर आपने बहुत अच्छा पीपीटी बनाया सर, वो बहुत फ्रूटफुल था सर, बहुत बेनिफिशियल था. अमित सर एक कॉल पे आपने समय दिया, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका. एंड प्रशांत सर आपका नेपाल पे आपसे अच्छा मैं आज तक किसी को नहीं सुन पाया हूँ. एक बार फिर से सभी का धन्यवाद. थैंक यू वेरी मच. थैंक यू टू ऑल participants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank
us.
you very much.
I'll be
Pleasure.
now. Thank you, sir.
Pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you.
Pleasure being with you all.
Thank you, Kamlesh ji. Thank you, Nakul ji. Thank you, Dr. Nishant.
Thank you, sir.
I want to thanks entire Prestige family.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you to my other peers also, to Dr.
Good day
Joya,
to everybody.
Dr.
Take care,
Abriyal,
very
Dr.
good care of
Prashant.
yourself.
Yes, same here. Really enjoyed having different shades of knowledge in the South Asia and Indo-Pacific region.
Yes, sir. So you're most welcome to join us tomorrow as well to listen to the other speakers.
Sure. We will be. Thank you, Nakul. Thank you, Dr. Nishant Joshi in absentia. Thank you, Kamlesh ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
With pleasure.